Chapter 880. After becoming a poison-assimilating ghost king, the myriad poison ancestor had gone from being a living being to a ghost, so he could hide very well. When Ru Xian came to see Gong Yuan, she had already guessed this worst-case scenario, so why would she not make any preparations? Myriad poison ancestor. How dare you interfere with the matters of our royal court? Gong Yuan saw the myriad poison ancestor, but not only was she fearless, but she even swung her tail and immediately approached the myriad poison ancestor. Her eyes became as deep as an abyss. She refused to believe that everyone possessed a wondrous ability like Li Qingshan. Sure enough, the myriad poison ancestor was slightly taken aback. He sensed the iciness and deathly stillness of Ruin's End. Because ghosts did not possess bodies, they were even more susceptible to mental attacks like this. Gong Yuan turned into a streak of blue light, making her way around the myriad poison ancestor and straight for Ru Xian. At this moment, an inhuman roar exploded in her ears. The myriad poison ancestor returned to his senses. His expression twisted and changed, and his body swelled up, going from a dignified, gloomy old man to a vicious ghost with a green face. A ghost claw the size of a millstone swung towards Gong Yuan. Gong Yuan struck back without even looking back. The flowing water froze into ice, but it was unable to stop the ghost claw at all. Countless pieces of ice spattered, but they directly passed through the ghost claw. Gong Yuan shivered inside. After becoming a ghost king, not only has this old monster's cultivation not weakened, but his close combat abilities have actually become so powerful. It's just a small trick. How can it stop me? Boom! The entire giant ship island shook gently. The Merfolk Palace shattered loudly, and the lakewater surged, surging towards the horizon. The poison-assimilating ghost king's colossal body staggered back a few steps. A layer of frost covered him, and even the poisonous flames in his eyes dimmed. Although he could incorporeal his body and avoid the direct attack of the ice, the coldness it contained could directly freeze the soul. As for Gong Yuan, she took advantage of the situation and grabbed Ru Xian. She turned around and said coldly, "Myriad poison ancestor, I respect you as a great cultivator, so I'll show you some respect. Don't be so ungrateful. I have to keep this person. No one has ever stolen anything from me. If you don't want these small fries to die, you can leave them here." Ji. The poison-assimilating ghost king's eyes burned with green poisonous flames as it let out a creepy laugh. "Your Majesty, this is bad. There's poison," Gong Kun said with difficulty, his lips turning blue. The mere people in the surroundings all lost their senses and fainted. Their bodies were dyed in a layer of green. Even the merman elders had to circulate their magic power to resist. Since it was called the poison-assimilating ghost king, it naturally did not focus on close combat, but on controlling poison. Killing without a trace. The myriad poison ancestor knew he was not Gong Yuan's opponent, so when he appeared to help Ru Xian break out of the ice prison, he treated the merfolk as targets and silently dispersed his poison. After he became a ghost cultivator, his methods of poisoning became even more insidious and secretive. Even an Azura commander could not endure his poison. Not everyone possessed a body as tough as Li Qingshan's. Gong Yuan also felt her hand turn numb. She lowered her head and took a look. Her face had turned green too. The myriad poison ancestor's silent release of poison was already startling, let alone forcefully taking a palm strike from him. "You other folk think you're some god or something, but you're nothing in my eyes. If you touch my disciple, I'll kill all of your elders. If you're so capable, come to the Mist Province and attack the myriad poison cult." I don't think you have the courage either. Cut the bullshit and release her, or I'll make them all die from the poison with a single thought. The myriad poison ancestor reverted to his original appearance and stood with his hands behind his back, displaying his true nature as a demonic cultivator. "I'll release her if you remove the poison, or your disciple will die with them too." Gong Yuan grabbed Ru Xian's shoulder with her left hand and squeezed it gently. The sound of ice shattering immediately rang out. Ice condensed on her right hand, and with a gentle shudder, the ice shattered. The color of her hand had already returned to normal. The other merpeople clearly did not possess what she was capable of. If it were not for the myriad poison ancestors' intentional control, the weaker merpeople would have been reduced to a puddle of water a long time ago. You're still threatening me? She's just a disciple. If she dies, then so be it. I've already poisoned her. Even if you don't kill her, I'll kill her. Don't even think about getting me to give away what she's developed for free. I'll count to 3. If you don't release her, I'll leave right now. Can you really make me stay? This was the strength of demonic cultivators. They did not care about benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, emotions, or morals. Let alone capturing a disciple like him, even his own son would be useless. If Yi Duanhai were a demonic cultivator, Li Qingshan would never have come to discuss a deal with him. It was not without reason that even gods and ghosts feared the wicked. You can leave, but can the head caretaker of the King of Yu's estate leave? Gong Yuan frowned. She understood that someone like the myriad poison ancestor was definitely capable of something like that. She could defeat him, but killing him was basically impossible. Once they fell out, he could poison all the merpeople present to death before running back to the myriad poison cult. No matter how powerful the merpeople were in the South Sea, they would not be able to do anything to him. As long as I can leave. If you're willing to fall out with the King of Southern Yu's estate, what does that have to do with me? The myriad poison ancestor cut right to the chase before beginning to count. 1. Is this what you want? Gong Yuan stared at Ru Xian closely. Her familiar face remained calm and cold the entire time. Even when the coldness had cracked her shoulder, she did not show the slightest hint of pain. What do you think? Ru Xian replied with a smile. 2. The myriad poison ancestor was ready to go, not to fight or save Ru Xian, but to flee. You vile spawn, piss off. He gritted his teeth and sent a palm strike towards Ru Xian's back. Originally, he wanted to heavily injure her, but a face suddenly appeared before him, and his heart softened. All he felt was coldness. At least you know what's good for you. The myriad poison ancestor was complacent. He did not even look at Ru Xian. You still haven't cured her? Gong Yuan said coldly, I've already planted coldness in her body, I've already said it. She's just a disciple. If she dies, then she dies. Don't make me say it a second time. Before I cure her, let's complete our deal first. If we can't make a deal, keeping her alive is useless. Feel free to kill her. You still want to make a deal with me? What do you want? Gong Yuan was both surprised and furious. Normally, great cultivators would still have some sense of pride, whether they were righteous or evil. She never expected the myriad poison ancestor to be so shameless. She gritted her teeth. She had never been so humiliated in her life. The lost stalks of the King of Yu. Sure enough, it's still that ram who's behind all this. Fine, I can give you the lost stalks of the King of Yu, but we'll talk about it after you, my disciple, fulfill your promise and kill 100,000 fire devourers. Not a single one less. As soon as Gong Yuan heard the lost stalks of the King of Yu, she confirmed that this was Mr. Ram's scheme. After all, this item was useless to regular cultivators. She also hated herself for being agitated when she saw this wretched spawn, which was why he managed to poison her successfully. Mr. Ram is about to leave. I want it right now. The myriad poison ancestor extended his hand. Your Majesty, we can die, but we can't lower our heads to humans. Spurt. A merfolk elder propped himself up and said, but as soon as he said that, he coughed up a mouthful of poisonous blood and collapsed on the ground, unconscious. You're still blabbering. The myriad poison ancestor sneered. We'll never lower our heads. Old monster, feel free to kill us. The merfolk all called out before coughing up blood again and fainting. They still cherished the glory of the ancient times, looking down on the despicable, shameless humans. They would rather die than yield. Don't worry. If you die, I'll immediately destroy the lost stalks of the King of Yu and bury them with you. Since the King of Yu's estate wants to restart the war, then come. Gong Yuan calmed down and stared at the myriad poison ancestor coldly. Hee, why must you? My stone heart isn't fake. You should be able to tell. I've studied it painstakingly for all these years, returning without any hesitation to help the merfolk kill powerful enemies. I'm much more loyal than these elders or whatnot. Your Majesty should be rewarding me. Ru Xian stood up on the surface of the lake and made her way over to Gong Yuan, staring straight into her eyes. Don't you claim to be calm and rational? Don't you have to consider the entire merfolk race? Don't you say you can't make decisions based on your emotions? Come, give me the lost stalks of the King of Yu. I'll help you kill 100,000 fire devourers, or you can kill me. It's fine. This group of merfolk will be buried with me anyway. Oh right, I'll have to endure the King of Yu's wrath too. There's the threat of the destruction of the entire race. Hurry up and think about it, Your Majesty. Come. After the residence of the merfolk shattered, it rapidly recovered. The entire hall fell silent. All that could be heard was the pouring rain outside. Ru Xian's voice echoed through the hall, growing louder and louder until it was almost a roar in the end. Gong Yuan fell silent for a while before taking out a handful of stalks. The black ones were dragon horns, while the white ones were dragon bones. After who knew how long, they still gave off the deep, unfathomable might of a dragon. Ru Xian accepted the lost stalks of the King of Yu and turned around, arriving before the myriad poison ancestor. The myriad poison ancestor examined them and confirmed they were real, but he raised his head. Why are you missing 2 stalks? There were a total of 49 stalks of the lost stalks of the King of Yu. The King of Yu's estate had 30 stalks, so Gong Yuan should have possessed 19, but there were only 17 here right now. She was missing a black stalk and a white stalk. It was just like how as long as there was a hole at the bottom of a bucket, it was a broken bucket. It could still be used to draw water, but it would be much less effective. The lost stalks of the King of Yu were the same. Once we're done, I'll give you the 2 stalks. Gong Yuan closed her eyes, no longer willing to look at them. She was afraid she would lose control and attack them. Alright, then it's a deal. Just when the myriad poison ancestor was about to say something, Ru Xian could tell that Gong Yuan had already backed away as far as she could. If she continued to force the issue, she would only end up falling apart, so she beat him to it. The lost stalks of the King of Yu were only used to keep the King of Yu's estate busy anyway. Whether they could collect them or not was the King of Southern Yu's concern. The myriad poison ancestor said nothing more. With a wave of his hand, specks of poisonous fire flew out from the mere people, and they all returned to their senses. Gong Yuan suddenly realized this wretched spawn of hers was definitely not as simple as the myriad poison ancestor's disciple. Otherwise, why would a disciple make a decision for their master without any objections from their master? However, it was too late to say anything now, and she did indeed need the stone heart to destroy the fire devourers. Very good. You've triumphed over your personal feelings once again and made the correct choice. You've earned my admiration. Farewell, Your Majesty. Wait for my good news. Someone once told me that a person's hatred will be avenged 100-fold, which is why I think 100,000 fire devourers is still a little too little. The rest will be up to you. Ru Xian recovered her composure. Before she left the residence, she said to Gong Yuan from behind. Gong Yuan was alarmed. She also considered how the fire devourers would respond after she used the stone heart. This battle would probably not end until one of them was dead. Chapter 881. The commotion caused by the human palace had alerted everyone on the island. However, when they arrived, However, by the time they arrived, the human palace had already returned to its original state. It was impossible to tell from the outside. Ru Xian arrived by the lakeside alone, allowing the rain to fall on her face. She was still rather agitated, but the heaviness in her chest had eased up by a lot. Afterwards, she put on her mask again and returned to her residence. "What are you doing here?" Mr. Ram suddenly appeared and stopped Ru Xian. He asked in doubt. "I've come to discuss some private matters with the Queen," Ru Xian said with a hoarse voice. "I'm leaving. Do you want to come with me?" Mr. Ram did not pry too much, asking meaningfully. "Right now? But the auction is tomorrow." Ru Xian was slightly surprised. "I'm already done with what I have to do. I have to report back. I can't help it." Mr. Ram let out a long sigh. "All right, I'll go ask my master about it right now." That night, even though he had been turned down time and time again, Mr. Ram still bid farewell to Ji Changfeng, Yi Duanhai, and Li Qingshan very politely. Only then did he board the Silver Dragon King with the myriad poison ancestor and Ru Xian. Mr. Ram stood at the front of the ship and clasped his hands with a smile before turning around and returning to the cabin. His expression became rather sunken, and he forced a smile at the myriad poison ancestor and Ru Xian. "Are you interested in visiting the interior of the Silver Dragon King? I left in too much of a hurry when I came, so I didn't have the time to be a good host. Now that I'm back, I won't be in such a hurry." "That's exactly what I was thinking," said the myriad poison ancestor. "Please." In the long, silver passageway, Mr. Ram led the way at the front, introducing the various designs of the Silver Dragon King. This was the first time the myriad poison ancestor and Ru Xian had ventured so deeply into the interior of the Silver Dragon King. They were both shocked. Once again, they felt that the colossal organization that was the King of Yu's estate was not something that individual cultivators or sects could contend with. Turning around a corner, Mr. Ram suddenly fell silent. He even tidied his clothes and passed through a long, covered bridge, arriving before a set of silver, metallic doors. In front is the core region of the Silver Dragon King. Ru Xian thought to herself, could it be that this Mr. Ram flew into a rage out of humiliation and wants to control the Silver Dragon King to attack Giant Ship Island? But that shouldn't be the case. No matter how unhappy he is, he has to consider the consequences. Flattening Giant Ship Island is easy, but killing Ji Changfeng and Gong Yuan is very difficult. One of them can control the wind and is extremely fast, and the other is the overlord of the Southern Sea. It will not be difficult for her to escape. Making two great enemies for no reason doesn't seem like something the Yu King's residents would do. The metal door opened, revealing a luxuriously decorated room. A silver humanoid puppet walked over and said in a cold mechanical voice, "Mr. Ram, you're back. His Majesty the King of Yu is waiting inside." The King of Southern Yu. Ru Xian and the myriad poison ancestor were both surprised. As a result, the puppet king before them was no longer as surprising anymore. They developed many doubts. The King of Southern Yu has actually been hiding in the Silver Dragon King the entire time. Yes, apart from him, who else has the right to control the Silver Dragon King? But does the mighty King of Southern Yu really have to hide like this? You said His Majesty the King of Yu was here. Why didn't you tell me in the beginning? The myriad poison ancestor frowned. His Majesty the King of Yu will personally explain this to the two of you. Please wait here for a moment. Mr. Ram made his way towards the wooden door at the end of the room with green carvings alone. Before long, the wooden door opened again, and three people emerged side by side, two men and a woman. They were all well-built, with messy hair like fire and scarlet eyes like charcoal. They were actually three fire devourers. There were two men and a woman in total. The one in the center was the oldest. His hair and beard connected together, making him as disheveled as a male lion. The aura he gave off was the strongest too. To the left was a female fire devourer filled with wildness. Even her skin was fire red. To the right was the current fire-devouring king, Zhu Yan. His aura was the weakest. In that moment, all the myriad poison ancestor felt was a wave of heat. When he sensed it carefully again, the surrounding temperature had not changed at all. As it turned out, it only originated from the heat in his mind. The three fire devourers were like three volcanoes. Terrifying power was hidden within their bodies. Once they erupted, they could destroy everything before them. Why were they here? The three of them ignored the myriad poison ancestor. They strode over, like a rampaging ball of flames. The myriad poison ancestor could not help but dodge to the side. His poison was not particularly effective against fire devourers, and ghosts were innately suppressed by open fire. As a matter of fact, he even had a feeling that if he clashed directly with the three of them, he would be dead for sure. However, he could not be bothered to consider this, as when he dodged, Ru Exan actually did not dodge at all. She simply stood there without moving at all. As soon as Ru Exan saw Zhu Yan, she stiffened up. She also felt heat. Her blood seemed to be on fire, and the scorching, piercing pain was unbearable. She became restless uncontrollably. This was the taste of hatred. She had once thought that after so many years, her hatred had already weakened. After drinking so much water of oblivion, the past should have blurred a little. Only now did she discover that not only had her hatred not lessened, but it had even grown with the passage of time. She had never left that fiery night. Make your choice. Do you want to be a merfolk or a fire devourer? You're not allowed to turn your head. You're not allowed to blink. If I see you shed a single tear, you'll suffer the same fate. Faced with the three people charging over, not only did Ru Exan not dodge or retreat, but she could not help but take a step forward instead. Right when she was about to collide with the three of them, a force swept her to one side. The myriad poison ancestor pressed down on her shoulder and barked, "Have you lost your mind from fright?" The old, lion-like fire devourer and the female fire devourer both showed contempt. Zhu Yan glanced at Ru Exan in a strange manner. He could clearly sense intense hostility. However, he had something important to do right now, and the two of them were guests of the King of Southern Yu, so he said nothing. It was just a puny human who had just undergone the second heavenly tribulation anyway. He could kill her with a single finger. Ru Exan blanked out for a moment before slowly calming down. "Please come in." Mr. Ram greeted them at the entrance. The myriad poison ancestor and Ru Exan finally stepped into the mysterious room. A handsome young man stared at them with a faint smile. He was the King of Southern Yu, Qian Lingji. "Greetings, Your Majesty." The myriad poison ancestor bowed. The moment he saw the King of Southern Yu, he came to a realization. He thought, legend has it that the secret technique of the Kingdom of Yu, the duality soul transformation technique, can condense two soul nascences. It's actually true. As it turned out, it was not the King of Southern Yu's original body here, but a soul nascence clone. Its aura was connected to the entire Silver Dragon King, actually using the Silver Dragon King as its body. Chapter 882. At the top of Cloud Sail Mountain, Ji Changfeng stood against the wind. The mountain breeze ruffled his robes. He stared at the Silver Dragon King, floating in the air, completely unaware of it. Actually, he did not directly turn down the King of Southern Yu's invitation. Instead, he agreed to provide a certain amount of resources and support, but who knew whether the King of Southern Yu would make an example out of him and destroy the Cloud Sail sect first. Before they knew it, the storm had eased up slightly. Gong Yuan held a black and a white divination token in her hand. Her eyes were as deep as the sea as she thought, "King of Southern Yu, oh King of Southern Yu, if you take action right now, you won't have the chance to obtain the two lost amulets of the King of Yu anymore." Yes, one of the main reasons why she agreed to give most of the lost stocks of the King of Yu to Ru Exan was because she wanted to give the King of Southern Yu a certain amount of hope. She did not want any unexpected problems to arise when they were about to declare war against the fire devourers. However, she had no idea there were so many twists and turns involved. Only Yi Duanhai was not too worried. As a sword cultivator, he was not afraid of being sucked into war like Ji Changfeng. However, even if he wanted to join the king of Southern Yu's estate, he would have to wait for an appropriate time. The South Sea Sword Pavilion had always been isolated overseas. They did not have much contact with the cultivation community of the Mist Province. Instead, their grievances with the myriad poison cult ran deep. Most importantly, the South Sea Sword Pavilion was not a demonic sect. If they joined from the very beginning, they would easily be ostracized or even reduced to cannon fodder. It was better to wait until a critical moment to make a decision. Sending charcoal in snowy weather was better than icing on the cake. Mr. Ram should be able to understand this. This was the might of a king's estate that guarded a province. Although Mr. Ram's persuasion was a complete failure, every single person who turned him down had made a certain level of preparation, afraid of actually falling out with the king of Southern Yu. Even Li Qingshan was no exception. Finally, the Silver Dragon King slowly set off, parting the rain clouds and heading to the distant north, leaving behind a starry heavens trail. As a result, everyone let out a sigh of relief. In particular, as the host, Ji Changfeng was the happiest. Phew, we've passed another obstacle. I knew the king of Southern Yu wouldn't be so unwise. Though, there seems to be fire at the bow of the ship. The clouds closed up, and the rain poured down. Li Qingshan watched the Silver Dragon King leave, but he felt a little uneasy. He couldn't get anything even with the spirit tortoise's divination. He said to little Anne, "Let's get ready to retreat too. Are you not going to wait for the auction tomorrow?" "I won't wait any longer. It's not very useful to me anyway. I'll go back and prepare to cooperate with Ru Xian's operation." Li Qingshan muttered Ru Xian and frowned as if he had overlooked something. He thought, with the myriad poison ancestor watching over her, she should be fine. Ji Changfeng was about to return to the Philian Hall when he suddenly sensed something and turned around. What's that?" The instant the clouds were about to close, he saw several dazzling scarlet stars appear in the resplendent river of stars. Radiance radiated in all directions like fire. "Your Majesty." The myriad poison ancestor took a step forward. Right when he was about to say something, the king of Southern Yu raised his hand and stared straight at Ru Xian. "I'm not talking to your disciple." This was already a warning. The myriad poison ancestor furrowed his brows firmly as he rapidly thought of a countermeasure. Li Qingshan had ordered him to protect Ru Xian no matter the cost, but if he took action here, he had no confidence at all. "All right." Ru Xian bowed slightly. Even when the king of Southern Yu had exposed her identity, she did not panic at all. She slowly took off her mask with both hands. Zhu Yan, who was about to cross the covered bridge, suddenly looked back, but all he saw were two doors that had closed one after another. "Ru Xian? I've never heard of that name before." The old, lion-like fire devourer asked through his soul sense, "What's wrong?" Zhu Yan said, "Nothing." "Then prepare to do it. With these 3 divine fire tablets, we can definitely burn that bitch Gongyuan to a crisp." King Fen, the divine fire tablets really are the divine artifacts of the kingdom passed down from ancient times. We've searched for them for so many years, yet we still couldn't find them. I didn't think they'd been hiding them in the king of Southern Yu's estate the entire time. But are we really going to help the king of Southern Yu fight? Zhu Yan asked. In order to obtain the heirlooms of the fire devourers, they had paid a considerable price, becoming honored guests of the king of Southern Yu's estate and setting foot on the Mist Province's war chariot. However, there were no godfolk who were willing to submit to humans, especially the violent fire devourers. Zhu Fen said, "That's right. We fire devourers aren't as hypocritical as humans. Since we've agreed to it, we won't go back on our word. However, don't even think about sending us to our deaths. We, the three gods, are attacking together. If we want to fight, we'll fight. If we want to leave, we'll leave. Who in the world can stop us? We can use this opportunity to burn more humans to death. Once they've run out of internal strife, the world is in chaos right now. It's a heaven-sent opportunity for us to rise up again. As they spoke, the three of them stepped onto the deck of the Silver Dragon King. Their gazes pierced through the sea of clouds, gazing at giant ship island below. The three of them glanced at one another and raised the divine fire tablets at the same time. With a clang, they struck each other. The divine fire tablets were around a foot long and scarlet red, like 3 pieces of red-hot branding iron. At the top were 3 balls of flames that merged together. The tablets were engraved with the words, Heaven, Earth, and Man. They possessed the power to incinerate everything. The scorching heat dispersed the thick clouds. In the moment they struck each other, there were bright sparks that rose extremely high into the sky. However, they seemed to have become much larger, as if many dazzling scarlet stars had lit up in the sky. Heavenly fire, meteors fall. Zhu Fen held the fire medallion of heaven in his hand and pointed at Giant Ship Island. Star after star flew downwards and grew larger and larger, dragging long tails of fire behind it. It whistled through the clouds and illuminated the dark and rainy night as well as everyone's eyes. Meteors of the heavenly fire, kill the merfolk. Unrelated people, die quickly. Zhu Fen laughed madly. He actually wanted to wipe out the entire cultivation community of the South Sea in a single stroke. My Cloud Sail sect has no grievances with your Fire Melt Mountain, so why are you attacking our headquarters? Aren't you afraid I'll come for revenge? Ji Changfeng called out in a hurry. At the same time, he powered the protective formation of the island. A faint, green barrier of light enveloped the entire island, blocking the meteors of the heavenly fire. However, before he had even finished speaking, there were 3 great rumbles. The meteors had blasted through the protective formation of the island. The surface area of Giant Ship Island was just too large. The outermost formation was only used to block the wind and rain of the sea and protect the mortals on the island. Its defenses were very limited. Boom! 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 The endless explosions were deafening. The entire island was covered in flowers, immediately reduced to a sea of fire. A meteor landed in 3 Sail City. The human and livestock residences in the center were directly vaporized, not even leaving behind ashes. Scorching waves of heat whistled past, reducing the city to burning ruins. There was not a single survivor. The residences of Li Qingshan and the other esteemed guests happened to be on the large cloud sail. They watched as a meteor smashed over. The terrifying aura made all the powerful cultivators close their eyes subconsciously. It was like the end of the world had arrived. Li Qingshan frowned and widened his eyes, watching as the meteor smashed into the protective formation. Flames flooded the surroundings, filling his vision and basically enveloping most of the mountain. They stuck to the mountain and burned for a long time. They would not stop until everything was reduced to ashes. The waves of heat swept over through the formation, and the cultivators all retreated. When they opened their eyes and discovered they were actually still alive, they did not feel any joy at all. There was only fear. They, who had always been particular about cultivating in seclusion, had finally become embroiled in a war, and it was a war they had absolutely no control over. Li Qingshan was extremely surprised as well. Fire devourers really are a fighting race renowned for their destructive power. This power is simply terrifying. These flames aren't regular flames either. Even with my phoenix bloodline, I'm not bold enough to take it head-on. Suddenly, a huge ball of ice burst through the sea of fire, passing through the protective formation and landing on Mainmast Mountain. The cultivators basically cursed aloud. Li Qingshan frowned too. Now, this really was troublesome. Your Majesty, why have you come? As it turned out, the ball of ice was Gong Yuan and the Mare people. The moment the meteor struck the protective formation on the outskirts, Gong Yuan immediately took action, condensing the entire residence and lake into a huge ball of ice and rushing towards Mainmast Mountain. Only after dodging a few meteors did she finally arrive. Boom! 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 The moment the ball of ice landed, 3 meteors struck Mainmast Mountain consecutively. The protective formation shook violently, demonstrating the fire devourer's determination to kill them all. It made people doubt just how long the formation could last. Gong Yuan glanced at Li Qingshan and was in no mood to pay any attention to him. She raised her head and gazed at the horizon. 3 tremendous, scorching auras rushed into the clouds. They were the 3 kings of the fire devourers, Zhu Fen, Zhu Zai, and Zhu Yan. What was even more shocking was that the flames on them were connected, forming the simplest formation of the 3 in the sky. However, their auras enveloped the entire island, gazing down like gods. In the sky even further away, the Silver Dragon King was about to cross the sea. Gong Yuan ground her teeth. The king of Southern Yu. Fire devourers were known for their ability in battle, but they were not skilled in hiding their auras, let alone obscuring the heavenly secrets. Only by hiding in the Silver Dragon King that prevented all detection could they venture deep into the South Sea silently. Originally, even if they ventured deep into the South Sea and launched a surprise attack, Gong Yuan would never have taken them seriously. The ocean was her home ground. Even if she was not their opponent, she could still escape easily. However, just the protective formation of Mainmast Mountain was very difficult for them to breach. Their wild bombardment would only push Ji Changfeng over to her side. As long as they could last a little longer and request reinforcements from the Crystal Palace, they would be able to surround or even kill them instead. However, the divine fire insignia in their hands had destroyed her last sliver of hope. They had come to take her life. Giant Ship Island burned, dispersing the clouds and rain and illuminating the sea and sky. Even from 50 kilometers away, the surging flames could be seen. Only the 3 peaks on the island stood in the sea of fire, enduring the bombardment of the meteors through the protective formation. Ji Changfeng, you're tangled up with the merfolk. Just how many seafarers have you held? Do you still want to hide away until now? Just watch. You and your cloud sail sect will all be reduced to ashes. Only now did Zhu Fen respond to Ji Changfeng's questions and threats. His voice was filled with contempt. The merfolk of the South Sea constantly used the seafarers to communicate with humans in exchange for resources that the sea did not possess. The temperaments of fire devourers were not suited for interacting with humans, so as a result, the Cloud Sail sect had become a great problem for the fire devourers a long time ago. However, they were not confident in killing Ji Changfeng in the past, so they gained a powerful enemy, which was why they had held it in until now. Now, this hatred had completely erupted, blazing like fire. Chapter 883. Ji Changfeng's face was dyed bright red by the firelight. The cool mountain breeze turned into surging waves of heat, causing his clothes to ruffle violently. The surroundings were filled with the sound of burning flames. Looking down from the top of the mountain, there was only boundless flames. 1,000 years of hard work on Cloud Sail Mountain had been reduced to ashes in a single day. Originally, one of the main reasons why Gong Yuan had come this time was to ask him to help her deal with the fire devourers, but he turned her down politely. Only now did he realize he had already become too deeply involved in the war, unable to extricate himself. He roared out furiously, "From today onwards, my Cloud Sail sect and Fire Melt Mountain will never stop until one of us is dead." The Philian flag appeared in his hand, growing to 30 meters in length in the wind. On the green flag, the Philian divine beast bared its fangs and brandished its claws, ready to take off. 10,000 kilometers of wind, extinguish. Ji Changfeng gripped the flagpole firmly with both hands and swung it violently. The Philian let out a roar, which also sounded like the roar of the fierce wind. The wind swept through, dispersing the flames on Cloud Sail Mountain before suppressing the flames on the entire island. The sky cleared up. Fellow Taoist Ji, let me lend you a hand. Gong Yuan flew to the top of the mountain. Faint blue coldness whistled out, merging with the wind from the Philian flag and turning into surging streams of cold air. A few meteors fell from the sky, but they were frozen before they could even hit the ground. I'd like to see how you destroy my Cloud Sail sect. If the Cloud Sail sect isn't destroyed today, I'll definitely make you pay tenfold in the future. Ji Changfeng's hair and beard ruffled in the wind. He seemed rather violent as he swung the flag furiously. The wind blew over from the sea in all directions. The surroundings were filled with the whistling of wind, while his voice merged with the wind, like the furious roar of a god of wind. However, Gong Yuan's coldness was not as imposing, but it was even more effective against the flames. Silently, the entire mountain froze up. It could no longer feel any heat at all. Instead, it became like winter. She spread her arms and sang a moving mermaid's song softly, like a prayer, like a chant, like a curse. At the same time, she raised the crystal scepter high into the air, shining with resplendent blue light along with the crystal accessories on her. The sea roared in response. Wave after wave surged over, constantly being evaporated by the flames, but it did not stop. The steam became thicker and thicker, piling up layer by layer outside Giant Ship Island. It was dyed red by the flames, presenting an extremely magnificent sight. On the top of Cloud Sail Mountain, green and blue light shone together, clashing with the 3 fire-devouring kings. Of the 3 fire-devouring kings, one of them was the master of Mount Cloud Sail, while the other was the ruler of the South Sea. The mountains and seas would provide them with endless support, and they had formations to block the fire devourers' attacks, so they could unleash their full strength without any qualms. The attacks from the 3 kings are quite fierce, but they are cloud kings. Kings are, is, cloud, changers. But cloud. However, getting through the protective formations of a large sect like the Cloud Sail sect in a single stroke won't be that easy unless the Silver Dragon King attacks. Li Qingshan also guessed that the Silver Dragon King was the reason why the fire-devouring kings could suddenly appear here. He looked at the horizon again. The Silver Dragon King had already vanished into the horizon. As it seemed, the King of Yu's estate did not plan on directly taking action. Is Mr. Ram really that confident in taking down the Cloud Sail sect? Nothing will happen to Ruexian, right? However, thinking about how no one would be bold enough to touch Ruexian as long as the King of Southern Yu did not directly fall out with the myriad poison ancestor, honored guest, he stopped worrying and continued to watch the show. In the fiery red sky, Zhu Yan said, "This Wind Gale King really does have some tricks up his sleeves. They have a geographical advantage, so it'll be disadvantageous to us if time goes on. It's just a trifling trick. Let me do it." The only female fire devourer, Zhu Zai, said in disdain. "All right. Destroy their formation." The bombardment of the meteors suddenly stopped, and the flames on Zhu Fen suddenly dimmed rapidly, passing to Zhu Zai. Zhu Zai raised the fire tablet of earth high into the air and pointed at the mountain from afar. "Let the earth blaze. Scorch the earth for thousands of kilometers." With a rumble, Giant Ship Island shook violently, as if a huge, violent beast was suppressed below, awakening from its slumber and trying to break free from its restraints to unleash destructive power. "I see." Li Qingshan suddenly understood. As it turned out, the meteors that fell from the sky were just preparations for the attack right now. Above the ocean and at the top of the mountains, Gong Yuan and Ji Changfeng did indeed possess a geographical advantage. If the fire devourers wanted to win, they had to destroy their geographical advantage first. The craters created by the meteors suddenly rose up high again, turning into over 100 hills. Cracks appeared at the top, shining with dazzling red light. "You!" Ji Changfeng's expression changed. Boom! 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 Within the endless rumbles, the hills turned into volcanoes. Lava gushed out, immediately bursting through Gong Yuan and Ji Changfeng's suppression. Black smoke rushed into the air as rivers of fire flowed about recklessly, reducing Giant Ship Island to scorched earth. It made Li Qingshan recall the situation of Fire Melt Mountain. Giant Ship Island was basically equivalent to a miniature Fire Melt Mountain. Even the boundless ocean had to be supported by the earth, while beneath the earth was the surging sea of lava, which allowed the fire devourers to possess a geographical advantage no matter where they went. However, Giant Ship Island was not. It was a mountain island. If they wanted to draw out the surging flames of the earth, they had to bombard it with the flames of the heavens first. The meteors from before were only the prelude. Now was the main show. The grade of the formation only played a half part in the defensive power of the protective formation. The other half came from the geographical advantage. The more blessed the land of cultivation, the stronger the defense. However, the surging flames of the earth wreaked havoc on the blessed land that was Giant Ship Island, eroding the underground spiritual veins wildly. Originally, Mizzenmast Mountain still held on stubbornly, but with the invasion of the flames of the earth, the protective formation rapidly dimmed. Very soon, the flames directly burned through it. The halls, terraces, flowers, and trees were immediately reduced to ash. A group of cultivators flew up in an attempt to flee for their lives, but before they could even fly very far, they were set alight as balls of fire, falling out of the sky. The weapons on them were forcefully melted away, becoming a part of the sea of fire. Only a young man rode a feather that resembled a small boat, soaring through the sea of fire and waves of heat, flying towards Mainmast Mountain. However, the feather also began to burn very soon. Ji Qingyu called out, "Save me, father." Ji Changfeng swung the Philian flag, and a whirlwind rushed through the sea of fire, sweeping towards Ji Qingyu. Die! Zhu Zai swung the fire tablet of earth. Boom! A volcano erupted, unleashing a pillar of fire and forcefully cutting off the whirlwind. Ji Qingyu's handsome face was filled with fear. In the blink of an eye, he was reduced to a skeleton before turning to ash. Qingyu. Ji Changfeng was utterly furious. In order to nurture his beloved son, he had made Mizzenmast Mountain host the situation and receive the weaker cultivators of the South Sea, establishing a foundation for his future development. He never thought he would encounter such a disaster. If mortals died, he could find a way to gather them again, but Mizzenmast Mountain was filled with disciples that had been carefully selected. Every single death pained Ji Changfeng, and the loss of his beloved son, who was connected to him by blood, was an irreparable loss. He roared furiously, "I'll never stop until you fire devourers are dead. Foolish human, save your own life first before we talk about anything else. It's been a long time since I've burned to my heart's content. I just love turning your blessed land into a land of disaster. I, Zhu Zai, will be the disaster of you humans." Zhu Zai laughed madly with hysterical hatred towards humans. Fire-red cracks extended upwards from the foot of Mizzenmast Mountain, all the way to the top. With a great rumble, magma gushed out, and Mizzenmast Mountain became an erupting volcano. At the same time, the protective formation of Mizzenmast Mountain reached the brink of collapse. With the great rumble, the entire Giant Ship Island shook violently, and the formation of Mizzenmast Mountain shattered as well, bursting into flames. There were a few more cries for help, and a few more balls of sparks were reduced to ash. Boom! Another volcano was born, and the flames on Giant Ship Island grew more and more vicious. Ji Changfeng was furious, but the surging waves of heat forced him away instead. As soon as the coldness Gong Yuan had released left Mizzenmast Mountain, it was nullified. The thick mist around Giant Ship Island was also swallowed by the black, oppressive ash. Mizzenmast Mountain had become a lone island in the sea of fire. "We're in deep trouble now." Li Qingshan and Little End exchanged glances, and Little End nodded in agreement, as Mizzenmast Mountain was shaking too. The protective formation flickered with light. Who knew when it would shatter? Who knew when it would shatter? By then, it would be the true killing move. The flames of heaven and earth were already so violent and vicious, so what would happen to the flames of man? That would truly be a case of fish in the moat being caught in a fire. However, he had come to deal with the fire devourers in the first place, so he was not exactly a fish in the moat. It was just that they had come knocking on his door before his scheme had even arrived. This efficiency was truly worth learning from. As for the cultivators of the South Sea, they were the true fish in the moat. Never did they think they would lose their lives in the Merfolk Sea Fair this time. Against the combined attacks of the three fire devourers, they did not have the slightest chance of survival. Fellow cultivators, the other folk are vicious. In this moment of life and death, if we don't work together to fend off the enemy, when are we going to wait? Ji Changfeng called out, and the elders and disciples of the Cloud Sail sect all responded. Many of their friends and relatives had been burned to death by the fire devourers. The merfolk went without saying. They had already worked together to put out the fire. Although they could not pose any threat to the three fire-devouring kings, every bit of strength they expended would increase their chances at victory. Sect Master Ji, this is an internal conflict among the other folk. What has it got to do with us? Please forgive me for my shallow cultivation, but I can't help you with anything. I'll be taking my leave first, said a cultivator. Li Qingshan glanced over. It was Seventh Seat, who had once made things difficult for him. Seventh Seat did not wait for Ji Changfeng to say anything. He took out a great shifting talisman and immediately activated it. Don't, fellow. Ji Changfeng said. Seventh Seat had already vanished, but he did not move several hundred kilometers away. Instead, he ran headfirst into the crater of the volcano on Mizzenmast Mountain. How did this happen? Seventh Seat paled in fright. He used his powerful cultivation to charge around in the sea of fire, wanting to fly back to Mizzenmast Mountain. Chapter 884. What a foolish human. They've put on such a great show. If they can't even seal off the region, Gong Yuan would have fled a long time ago, alright? Li Qingshan shook his head and sighed. Great shifting talismans were precious, but he did not lack them. However, Yin Qing in the Azura field had already told him that the surrounding space had been disturbed by a great power. Even if she used a spatial movement technique, she might not necessarily be able to escape. If a layman tried to rush out with a talisman, he would be courting death. Gong Yuan glanced back and shot a glance at Li Qingshan. I don't know if you're really that bold, or if there's something wrong with your head. Do you really think the fire devourers will spare you out of the kindness of their hearts? Ha, I'm not that naive. They can spare anyone, but not me. I'm guessing I'm their third target after you and fellow Ji, right, fire-devouring kings? Li Qingshan asked loudly. Yes, but you're wrong about something. Oh. What's wrong? You're their second target. Zhu Yan said, you managed to escape last time, but you're dead for sure this time. That took everyone by surprise. They all looked at Li Qingshan. The fire devourers had actually treated him as an enemy only second to the Merfolk Queen, even ranking above a great cultivator like Ji Changfeng. Just what had he done to the fire devourers? In the beginning, Zhu Yan did not take Li Qingshan too seriously. He had merely chased away a foolish mortal with delusions of his own accord. However, after Li Qingshan destroyed the entire myriad poison cult and killed 100,000 bone-eating shamans, Zhu Yan no longer dared to think like that anymore. He had not undergone the third heavenly tribulation, yet he was already so vicious. If he really did undergo the third heavenly tribulation, then what would happen to him? With his age, that was basically a given. Compared to Ji Changfeng, who was nearing the end of his lifespan, he was a truly terrifying threat. He had to be nipped in the bud. Gong Yuan suddenly found Li Qingshan to be much more pleasing to the eye. Compared to Ji Changfeng, that overcautious old man who only wanted to maintain a neutral position, this was called having a firm stance and soaring ambitions. Of course, it would be even better if he managed to kill a fire-devouring king. Li Qingshan laughed heartily. Zhu Yan, I didn't expect you to have such good eyesight. However, it's still unknown who will live and who will die. Fire-devouring queen, what did I say? I have grievances with the fire-devourers. You should be glad you didn't fall out with me in the Hylian Hall right now. Then why aren't you joining hands with us to fight against the enemy? Gong Yuan's voice softened. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. At this juncture of life and death, that little conflict of the past was nothing. Sure. Li Qingshan flew to the peak of the mountain and transmitted his voice. However, I have a small condition. I heard that you have a heart of the abyss. If you give it to me, I will help you escape. How about it? How did you know? Gong Yuan's expression changed slightly. Very few people cultivated all water to ruin's end. Even among the mere folk, there aren't a lot of people who know about the heart of the abyss, so how does a kid from the Green Province know so much? An idea flashed through her head. You know that wretched spawn. Don't worry about how I know. All I'm asking is whether you're going to give it to me or not, said Li Qingshan. Don't even think about it. Gong Yuan was infuriated by Li Qingshan's actions of taking advantage of the situation. She tossed aside the sliver of good impression she had just developed. That's up to you, but I'd advise you to consider the bigger picture. Li Qingshan returned to his original position and stood with his hands behind his back, continuing to watch the show. The current situation was indeed dangerous, but after considering it calmly, he discovered that the danger was not fatal. Instead, it was an opportunity. If the three fire-devouring kings had come for him, then he would truly be in life-threatening danger. The danger was no less than when he faced the Dragon King of the Sea. However, their primary target was still Gong Yuan at the end of the day, and he did not believe he was second. Once Ji Changfeng escaped, they would truly become sworn enemies. The significance of killing Gong Yuan on Fire Melt Mountain would diminish drastically. With the two of them at the front, he was confident that escaping would not be a problem. The Phoenix's Nerva was enough to withstand a fatal attack, and his Tremors of the Ox Demon was enough to blast through the seal of the domain. As long as he left Giant Ship Island and directly used a great shifting talisman to flee, it would be impossible for the fire devourers to split up and chase after him. Perhaps he could even do something while Fire Melt Mountain was empty. Gong Yuan's expression stiffened. If it were not for the fact that a powerful enemy was right beside her, she basically could not help but kill Li Qingshan. She became doubtful again. Don't tell me he really has a way to escape. That's impossible. The three divine fire seals have already turned Giant Ship Island into a domain of fire. Even I can't think of a good way to escape. Their communication through soul sense only happened in a split second. They did not waste a single second. Mainmast Mountain trembled gently. Scorching lava surged at the foot of the mountain as the flames blazed fiercely. The protective formation gave off waves of light to defend, but after losing its foundation, it rapidly dimmed. You're about to die, yet you're still so stubborn. Alright, I'll make you die together and send you to the afterlife together. Zhu Zai snorted coldly. The fire tablet of earth produced a ring of flames. The flames on Giant Ship Island all surged towards Mainmast Mountain. In a single moment, it actually enveloped the entire mountain, turning it into a mountain of flames. Ji Changfeng no longer cared about waving the Hylian flag. He focused on controlling the protective formation. Even his hair and beard were dyed red by the firelight. He roared out, "Fellow Yi, what are you hesitating for?" Yi Duanhai remained motionless the entire time. In terms of direct battle prowess, it was very likely for him to be the strongest on the island as a great sword cultivator. Pavilion Master Yi, we fire devourers have clear boundaries. You should leave with your disciple. However, you should reconsider His Majesty's invitation, or the flames of the Cloud Sail sect might even reach the South Sea Sword Pavilion in the future. Zhu Yan said right afterwards. This was both an order from the king of Southern Yu, as well as a concern for Yi Duanhai's strength. Their primary objective this time was still to kill Gong Yuan. If the enemy gained another great sword cultivator, it would add a lot of variables, so they might as well just let him go. Feel free to come. A sliver of cold light flashed through Yi Duanhai's eyes. He understood that the fire devourers had purposefully mentioned the king of Southern Yu to draw their hatred. He had never planned on getting involved in this mess in the first place, or he would have taken action a long time ago. Right when he was about to leave with his disciple, he glanced at Li Qingshan again. He had agreed to help Li Qingshan once, and right now, it seemed like Li Qingshan needed help the most. If Li Qingshan spoke up, he would truly be troubled. He had some confidence in escaping after a great battle against the fire devourers, but his disciples would probably all die here. He secretly made up his mind to never bring so many people with him again in the future. As a swordsman, he had to do things alone, without any ties or ties. Pavilion Master Yi, there's no need to look at me. You can go. 3 measly fire devourers aren't enough to take my life. You can take Yu Wufeng with you too. Go back and cultivate properly. Once you've made up your mind to undergo the tribulation, I'll remove the blood oath. Li Qingshan waved his hand in an unconcerned manner. He could not waste this opportunity he had obtained after so much difficulty here. Fellow Li, aren't you cutting off your own path of survival? Ji Changfeng panicked, and Gong Yuan also hated Li Qingshan so much that she ground her teeth. Like that, the situation became a little more dangerous. They had basically lost their final chance of survival. There's no need to look at me. They have no grievances with the fire devourers, so they never planned on fighting in the first place. Do you really think you can beg someone else for your own path of survival? There's only a battle. Li Qingshan said. What a king of savages. I, Yi Duanhai, will remember this. Yi Duanhai clasped his hands towards Li Qingshan, showing a hint of respect. With his disciples, he fell into a sword formation and rushed out of Mainmast Mountain. Sure enough, the fire devourers opened up a path. The sea of fire parted, allowing Yi Duanhai to dive into the ocean. He vanished in the blink of an eye. Wait, we have no grievances with the fire devourers either. Don't fire devourers draw a clear line between love and hate? Please spare our lives. Yeah. I've always hated merfolk. I have no intention of becoming enemies with Fire Melt Mountain. The cultivators of the South Sea called out loudly, solemnly swearing to sever their ties with the Cloud Sail sect and the merfolk of the South Sea. Zhu Fen said, do you know what fire devourers hate the most? Weaklings. Because you're too weak, you're all going to die today. The cultivators of the South Sea cursed aloud, but it only made Zhu Fen laugh madly. He said to Zhu Yan, King Yan, it's about time. It's time for you to take action. I've been running out of patience a long time ago. Zhu Yan raised the fire tablet of man high into the air. Zhu Fen and Zhu Zai's powers gathered on him alone, and the fire tablet of man blazed with flames. Fire of man, descent of the fire god. All of you can die. The flames that burned through Mainmast Mountain suddenly swept up and gathered together. With a loud dragon's roar, a fire dragon whistled out of the sea of fire. It was complete with scales and claws, and its claws and teeth were distinct. It swung its tail viciously against the formation, and the light flickered. That's it. Li Qingshan raised an eyebrow. Compared to the flames of heaven and the flames of earth, the fire of man was a little too weak. The fire dragon possessed the strength of a regular demon king, but that was all there was to it. And it even said something like, all of you can die. Gong Yuan suddenly communicated with Li Qingshan in a hurry, if you can help me break free from here, I'll lend you the heart of the abyss for a year. I'll lend you the heart of the abyss for a year. 10 years. 3 years. 5 years. All right. As if she was extremely worried, Gong Yuan agreed to Li Qingshan's request very soon. In that short moment of communication, another dragon's roar rang out. The two dragons swam about, and Gong Yuan's expression became sterner and sterner. Suddenly, the backs of the two dragons bent down, and a pair of huge feet condensed from flames stood on the dragons. Gazing up along the feet, a colossal figure flickered in and out of the sea of fire, gradually taking shape. It was a giant god of fire that stood on two dragons. Its well-defined body was like a mountain, and it radiated with a primitive, savage aura. Its face was distorted and indistinct in the flames, but every single cultivator felt an unprecedented pressure. They were all shocked. Li Qingshan frowned. He basically felt like he was facing the Dragon King of the Sea, and compared to the Dragon King of the Sea's unpredictability, this giant god of fire that radiated with a violent aura was without a doubt more offensive. Once it struck, it would definitely be earth-shattering. None of the people present would be able to face it head-on. The three fire-devouring kings in the air were all excited. Holding the divine fire tablets with both hands, they bowed towards the giant god of fire from afar. Burn everything, great god Zhurong. Chapter 885. The cultivators of the South Sea and the merfolk all covered their ears and collapsed on the ground, wailing out in fear like mortals. Yes, they viewed mortals as ants, but in the face of this legendary god, weren't they also like ants? Not to mention getting up to fight, they couldn't even muster the will to resist. This was a huge disparity in their nature. The roar was only a roar to vent. It was nowhere near an attack. Li Qingshan also felt his blood surge as his ears rang. He used the spirit turtle in a hurry to compose himself. This definitely isn't the real fire god Zhurong. It can't even directly descend like Cheongqi. There's only a sliver of his aura at most. He doesn't even have a consciousness of his own, yet he's already so powerful. How spectacular! Li Qingshan, why aren't you doing anything yet? Gong Yuan took a step back almost instinctively. Water should have countered fire, but against a godlike existence like this, even she had lost the confidence to emerge victorious. The divine fire tablets truly were the divine artifact of the fire-devouring kingdom after all. They fell into formation, sealed off the region, bombarded it with heavenly fire, and seethed with earthly fire. In the end, it was all to summon the god that the fire-devourers worshipped, Zhurong. You're a mighty merfolk queen, yet you're placing your hopes on a second heavenly tribulation human like me. Isn't that a little too much? The demon heart in Li Qingshan's body flickered. Surging demon chi condensed into a set of demonic armor. Before he knew it, his eyes had already turned scarlet red. His face was hidden behind the horned helmet, but his smile did not change. Instead, it was filled with excitement. For the first time, Gong Yuan did not find his audacity to be so detestable anymore. As a matter of fact, she even felt a hint of relief that she refused to admit. No regular person could remain in high spirits before an existence like that. Little and beside him was even stranger. He remained expressionless, as if the giant god of fire did not exist at all. Li Qingshan adjusted his helmet and sensed the various pitch-black powers. He nodded at Little and beside him. With two rumbles, the giant god of fire rode on the fire dragon, extending his arm and wrapping it around a small portion of the mountain. The protective formation twisted and collapsed, about to shatter in an instant. The giant god of fire suddenly exerted its strength and rammed its head against the mountain peak, making everyone's souls leave their bodies. Li Qingshan did something that nobody expected. He strode, accelerated, and spread his wings to charge at the giant god of fire. Is he tired of living and seeking death? Whether it was the lofty fire devourers or the regular cultivators of the South Sea, they all thought the same thing. Li Qingshan was the first to charge out of the spell formation. He was still several hundred meters away, but the heat waves that swept towards him had already turned his demonic armor bright red. The blurry face of the giant god of fire filled his vision, filled with violence and destruction. Compared to this giant god of fire that was several hundred zhang tall, he was as insignificant as a bug. The sense of danger and fear screamed in his heart, but it also made his blood boil and burn, giving him a kind of freedom that could cast aside everything. Within 1,000 feet, the helmet softened, the armor melted, and the devil chi was depleted. Within 10 zhang, his flesh was burning, and his bones could be seen. He was also burned red. The instant he threw himself into the flames, he pushed his right hand forward, and the azure field appeared in his hand. The blood-colored vortex spun and expanded. It was like a great, gaping mouth that swallowed the giant god of fire. The firelight that filled the surroundings suddenly dimmed, which actually made the people on the mountain feel rather uncomfortable. They looked at one another. What's happened? It was not just the giant god of fire. Even Li Qingshan vanished. A red-haired, red-eyed man appeared in the air, holding the azure field in his hand. With a flash, he returned to the top of Cloud's Sail Mountain, handing the scorching, trembling azure field to Little and said indifferently, "The fire person has already been temporarily sealed. If you don't fight him now, when are you going to fight him?" "All right, the king of savages really does live up to his reputation. Today, I'll fight the fire devourers to the death." Ji Changfeng suddenly tore off his loose clothes, revealing his old but sturdy body. Then he swung the Fylian flag in his hand, and the Fylian hall collapsed loudly, producing a shrill howl of wind. A whirlwind rushed out of the dust and whistled over. Ji Changfeng leapt up and just happened to ride on the whirlwind. Only then did he discover that the whirlwind was the Fylian divine beast from the murals. If Zhurong was the god of fire, then the Fylian was the god of wind. Although it was nowhere close to the giant god of fire summoned by the 3 fire-devouring kings with the fire god's tablets, it still possessed some power after being worshipped by the Cloud Sail sect for several millennia. It was on par with early 3rd Heavenly Tribulation demon kings, and its speed was startlingly fast. Ji Changfeng and the Fylian's figures both blurred. Only a long gust of wind rose into the air, attacking the 3 fire-devouring kings. Gong Yuan swung her crystal scepter and produced a streak of cold, azure light, directly targeting the weakest of the 3, Zhu Yan. "What's going on?" "Zhu Yan, get the fire god to destroy the arcane treasure." Zhu Fan bellowed out, swinging the fire tablet of heaven to block Ji Changfeng's swift and fierce attacks. They had summoned the giant god of fire together. Originally, they were at their strongest, but now, they were at their weakest. "No, great god Zhurong's aura is far too powerful. Even I can't control it properly." Zhu Yan frowned. As he dodged the incoming cold light, he gripped the fire tablet of man firmly, ordering the giant god of fire to attack without any regard for the consequences. The giant god of fire was far too powerful. It was impossible for him to control it with ease. All he could do was give some simple orders. Actually, there was only one way to attack. At most, he could only choose a target to attack. As for how to attack, it would all depend on the giant god of fire's instincts. The giant god of fire was extremely powerful, but it lacked any intelligence. It only inherited a sliver of fire god Zhurong's will to advance bravely and destroy everything, which was why it charged headfirst into the azure field. Otherwise, no 3rd Heavenly Tribulation expert would have been trapped by the azure field so easily. "You 2 men are not even as good as me, a woman. What's there to be afraid of? It's just an arcane treasure with a space of its own. The fire god will destroy it before long, and by then, it'll be their deaths. With the 3 of us working together and the divine fire tablets in our hands, do you really think they'll be able to escape?" With that, Zhu Fan and Zhu Yan returned to their senses. The divine fire tablets definitely did not just consist of these 3 axes. It possessed a combination formation. They stabilized their footing, only defending and not attacking, waiting for the giant god of fire to break free. No matter what Ji Changfeng and Gong Yuan did, they were unable to break through the simplest formation of the 3 immediately. The giant god of fire did not break free as quickly as the fire devourers imagined it to be. Both sides were extremely worried. Just what had happened? It was impossible for a mere arcane treasure to possess such great sealing power. Was there some powerful existence hidden within that kept the giant god of fire busy? Or was it just Li Qingshan? That was impossible. Even if he underwent the third heavenly tribulation, the giant god of fire would still crush him to pieces. In the Azura field, Li Qingshan stood on the ground and gazed up. He found the giant god of fire to be even more indomitable, its pressure like that of a god. Chapter 886. The scorching heat emitted by the giant god of fire quickly evaporated the water vapor in the Azura field. The vast clouds and mist filled the air, illuminated by the firelight, turned bright red. The forest was set ablaze, and black smoke blended into the clouds. Roar! The giant god of fire roared at the ant in front of it. Without the obstruction of the formation, Li Qingshan could truly feel the power of this roar. It was like a typhoon passing through. The soil and rocks around him were blown 100 miles away, melting into magma in midair. The giant god of fire turned its head, ready to break through this domain. Although it didn't have much intelligence, it had the most basic combat awareness. With the strength and realm of that ant, it should have been reduced to ashes after taking this roar head-on. But in the next instant, the giant god of fire turned its head again. If the blurry face of flames couldn't make an expression, then it would definitely be surprise and doubt. Amidst the smoke and the boiling magma, Li Qingshan stood where he was without moving. His scarlet hair danced, and his scarlet eyes were like fire as he stared at the giant god of fire. He suddenly spread his arms, and his body rapidly expanded until it was almost 100 meters tall. Just now, he stopped. His hair was like flames, and his skin was like black iron. He was like a demon. His ox hooves stepped forward, and the earth cracked. He roared at the sky, and the wind became fierce. A gust of wind twisted and rolled like a dragon, rushing into the clouds, breaking through the layers of flames and blasting the giant god of fire's face. Sparks flew everywhere. The giant god of fire raised its head slightly, but that was all. Even when Li Qingshan unleashed the tiger demon's breath at full strength, he was actually unable to cause any actual damage to him. However, he had achieved his objective of provoking him 100%. Roar! The giant god of fire was infuriated. The flames on his body burned wildly, and he lunged at Li Qingshan on the fire dragon. Even if Li Qingshan's body had grown to an unprecedented height, almost equivalent to a 100-story building in his previous life, compared to this giant god of fire, the difference was like the difference between a child and a strong man. As the giant god of fire approached, the temperature of his body kept rising. Scorching, melting, boiling. There's no chance of victory if I fight him head-on. Li Qingshan made his judgment. The magnificent phoenix wings suddenly spread open, and at the same time, he activated the wings of wind. His huge body soared into the clouds, and he was about to use the palm technique that descended from the sky again when a scorching heat rapidly approached. The gigantic figure of the giant god of flame appeared from the clouds, and he flew over on the twin dragons. His speed was even faster than Li Qingshan's. The giant flaming palm blotted out the sky and came whistling towards him. Li Qingshan raised his red eyebrows. He had no time to dodge at all. He only felt his right leg tighten and heat up. The giant god of fire grabbed Li Qingshan and jumped down from the fire dragon, throwing him onto a small hill. Boom! The hill instantly turned into a basin. Li Qingshan's entire body felt like it was about to split apart. The two fire dragons coiled around him and locked his arms tightly like chains. They spat out two streams of blazing dragon fire, wanting to burn him alive into ashes. Is this the difference in power? Not only is it hard to win, but I can't even fight him. I can't even run away. But this is the opponent I want. If I don't even have a life and death crisis, how can I break through the 5th tier of the tiger demon? Tremors of the ox demon. Li Qingshan roared angrily. Black cracks tore apart the flames around him. He reached out and grabbed the heads of the 2 fire dragons, slamming them together violently. Only then did he break free. The giant god of fire's hand trembled and froze in midair. However, it still clenched tightly without letting go. This was Li Qingshan's most powerful mystical ability that had always been successful, but it could not crush such a powerful opponent head-on. Li Qingshan used the strength of the ox demon and punched the giant god of fire's wrist with all his strength. The power of tremors whistled out. Only then did the giant god of fire finally let go, allowing him to pull out his leg. His flesh had already been burned away, leaving only the leg bone that had been burned bright red. However, he did not have the time to look at it. Instead of retreating, he advanced and threw himself at the giant god of fire, slamming his fist into the giant god's face. Flames surged and scattered. The giant god of fire's blurry face was also forcibly scattered. However, Li Qingshan did not feel the slightest bit complacent, because it was not because his punch was fast or fierce, but because the giant god of fire had no intention of dodging or escaping. It had directly met his attack with an attack. Before he could enjoy the pleasure of slapping its face, a scorching and violent power slammed into his chest, and the sound of bones shattering rang out. Li Qingshan was blasted dozens of kilometers away and slammed heavily into a great snow mountain. Only then did he come to a stop. The sturdy ice and boulders collapsed, almost burying him. Before he could get up, the scorching sensation assaulted his face again. Boom 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 boom. The giant god of fire swung its fists furiously. The fists rained down on Li Qingshan's body. It was not regular rain, but a meteor shower. The power of every single punch was on par with a meteor shower. The great snow mountain shook violently, or perhaps it could no longer be called a snow mountain anymore, as all the ice and snow had evaporated. The thousands of tons of rock that had collapsed had melted into scorching magma. Li Qingshan was unable to put up any resistance at all. He was punched into the mountain again and again. At a time like this, what kind of ability should he use? What kind of ability could he use? The power of tremors? Useless. The spirit turtle's profound shell? Useless. The nightmare tiger's demonic eye? Useless. 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 Everything was useless. Against such overwhelming power, even if he had 1,000 variations and 10,000 abilities, it was useless. His attacks posed no threat, and his defenses were as fragile as paper. It seemed like he could only accept his fate and accept death. However, Li Qingshan did not admit defeat. His flesh was burnt to ashes, and the tiger bones that he was so proud of were covered in cracks. At this time, it was already too late to escape from the Azura field. The flames on the giant god of fire were so intense that even the void distorted from the heat. There was no way to teleport out. If he could not defeat it, only death awaited him. Even until this moment, he did not have the slightest chance of victory. Instead, he had fallen into fatal danger. The ox demon's great strength sinks into the mud, enduring and unmoving like the earth. Earth divine power. Li Qingshan simply gave up on all efforts to attack and defend. He fused all his consciousness into the boundless earth and activated earth divine power. Suddenly, he entered a wondrous world that he had never seen before. It was as if he had really become a part of the earth, silently enduring the blows of wind, frost, rain, and snow for billions of years, holding up the sea and the sky. The raging fiery fists continuously bombarded his body, and then were drawn into the mountains and the earth. The speed at which his body was collapsing and being destroyed suddenly slowed down. I see. Li Qingshan seemed to have understood something. In the past, no matter when or against any enemy, he had never been like this, giving up on all actions and enduring all attacks. He now had a deeper understanding of the innate divine ability, strength of the earth. Still, this move really is a little useless in battle. I can't attack, I can't defend, and I can't even escape. Isn't this just a big sandbag? I can't just divert all my attacks into the earth. There will come a time when I can't hold on if I keep getting beaten up. Still, at least for now, his big sandbag still played a certain role. It allowed the giant god of fire to throw many more punches. Streaks of cracks climbed up the great snowy mountain. As Li Qingshan channeled the damage into the earth, the great snowy mountain was collapsing at an accelerated rate. Li Qingshan's body was also on the brink of shattering. The giant god of fire's attacks suddenly paused. It clenched its fists and raised them high. The flames on its body dimmed and gathered on its fists. It raised them high like torches, blazing like the sun and scorching the skies. Then, it swung them down fiercely like a falling comet, crashing into the earth. Li Qingshan's tiger bones shattered, and a wave of air swept across the entire Azura field. The great snowy mountain trembled violently, and then collapsed with a rumble, burying him like a new grave. The giant god of fire took a few steps back. As if tired, it suddenly turned its head. It was at this moment that an Azura commander wielding a giant battle axe descended from the blood-colored vortex in the sky. The fierce battle between the giant god of fire and Li Qingshan, or rather, one-sided suppression, had stirred up unprecedented fighting and killing intent. It was absorbed by the Azura field, and another Azura commander was summoned. When the Azura commander saw the giant god of fire, his eyes widened. Fire god Zhurong. Roar! The giant god of fire let out a furious roar, and the Azura commander blocked with his battle axe instinctively, only to be blown away by an unstoppable force. His body turned to ash in the air, unable to recover no matter how great his life force was. The battle axe melted into a lump of metal. Having conveniently dealt with a fly, the giant god of fire was about to break out of the world when it suddenly looked back and gazed at the collapsed snowy mountain. The aura that it had personally destroyed seeped out from the rock once more. Boom! Thousands of tons of rock collapsed, and Li Qingshan leapt out. The phoenix's nerva had been reborn in fire, so he was completely unscathed. He said to the giant god of fire, "Don't fret. There's still the second round." Before he had even finished speaking, flames surged over. Spirit Turtle's profound shell, block. Li Qingshan waved his hand, and the pieces of the Spirit Turtle's profound shell assembled into a smooth, mirror-like wall. Under the giant god of fire's attack, it only lasted for a split second before shattering with a clang. Li Qingshan crossed his arms in a defensive posture, but he was blown away again. He adjusted his posture in the air and stabilized himself, but a sliver of joy appeared on his face. He could finally see a chance at victory. If it were before the Nerva, the Spirit Turtle's profound shell would have served no defensive function at all apart from distracting him and wasting his demon chi. Once the difference in strength reached a certain level, even the greatest technique would become a pointless trick. But it was different now. After a series of furious attacks, the flames on the giant god of fire had already dimmed slightly compared to the beginning. Even its body had shrunk slightly. Although it was still much larger than Li Qingshan, its strength was clearly declining. This was the greatest flaw of the giant god of fire. Although it could rival the Dragon King of the Sea at its peak, it was not a living existence after all. Its strength would be depleted. Originally, this was not a flaw. If it were on Giant Ship Island where lava flowed and flames roared, the giant god of fire would be able to last a very long time. It could basically crush and destroy all existences. However, in the Azura field, there was no opportunity to replenish its strength. Every sliver it used was a sliver less. It was exactly because of this judgment that Li Qingshan was bold enough to drag it into the Azura field for a battle to the death. He had gone to the lengths of rebirth exactly to deplete the giant god of fire's strength. Otherwise, while it was battle-hungry, it did not like throwing its life away. Chapter 887. However, no matter how low his chances of victory were, it was completely different from having no chances at all. The most important thing was that his various abilities were beginning to come into play. Just now, the spirit turtle's profound shell had only blocked for a split second, but it had reflected a portion of the damage. The power of the giant god of fire's attack on him had been weakened by 30% at the very least, which was why he could endure it. If I'm killed again, I'll really be dead. However, this is what you call a true battle to the death. If I know I can be reborn and always think about escaping, how can I break through to the 5th layer of the tiger demon? Li Qingshan let out a violent tiger roar, but his eyes became as calm as the deep sea. Suddenly, he vaguely saw the trajectory of fate. In a single moment, the giant god of fire arrived before him. Flames raged and waves of heat surged. I see it. Li Qingshan's eyes flashed, and he saw a shadow appear on the giant god of fire. Its left hand punched over while its right hand formed a claw, ready to strike. The most dangerous part was that the 2 dragons beneath its feet flew over, wanting to wrap around his legs. His heart sank. If he waited for the giant god of fire to actually strike before dodging, it would be impossible. Once he was caught again, all that awaited him was being burned to death. In the next moment, the shadow became real. Sure enough, the giant god of fire struck out like that. Within its endless violence, it demonstrated its powerful instincts for battle. Gravity of the earth. A powerful gravitational force suddenly appeared between Li Qingshan and the giant god of fire, rapidly closing the distance and forcing him into the giant god of fire's arms. The giant god of fire's killing move immediately missed, and it swiped at its chest. Tiger demon digs out the heart. Flames surged from the giant god of fire's chest and abdomen, spewing out meteors that slammed into Li Qingshan one after another. Flames shot out, and within the rumble, Li Qingshan was sent flying again. The burn on his chest was bone deep, but he smiled. So you're not without weaknesses. Li Qingshan suddenly unfurled his phoenix wings and rushed into the clouds. The place where he originally stood became a sea of fire and magma. The giant god of fire stood in it, roaring at the sky and soaring into the air on a fire dragon. Pitch-black cracks and scorching flames constantly intertwined in the sky. 2 huge figures danced around in the sky, chasing each other and killing each other. Sometimes they approached each other, and sometimes they separated. The Azura field, which spanned several hundred miles, was really too small. For them, it was like a large cage, not allowing anyone to escape at all. Li Qingshan knew that he did not have the strength to fight the giant god of fire head-on. With the spirit tortoise divination, he always predicted the enemy's moves and resolved the crisis at the critical moment. Sometimes, he would counterattack. The water god seal in his body continuously transferred the spiritual power accumulated in the Great Cloud Dream Swamp to him in order to maintain a sufficient amount of demonic aura. However, the consumption of his thoughts could not be made up. Although the divination technique of predicting the enemy's moves was powerful, it could not be maintained for too long. Especially in such a fierce battle, the sea of consciousness faintly surged and millions of ripples appeared. If not for the fact that the giant god of fire was not a true cultivator and only possessed a trace of the fire god's aura. Otherwise, any great cultivator would possess the ability to interfere with divination. The current spirit turtle was unable to divine at all. Only if it reached the 5th layer and underwent the 3rd heavenly tribulation would it be able to suppress and remove the interference. The giant god of fire suddenly stopped and landed on the ground again. The 2 fire dragons coiled around its body as if it had lost interest in pursuing Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan finally caught his breath. His calm and tranquil eyes returned to normal, but there was a hint of deep exhaustion. He had used this move to the point where he could not use it again. However, before he could even catch his breath, an unprecedented sense of danger from the start of the battle to now filled his heart. The giant god of fire spread its feet and stood on the ground. Surging fire gathered in its right hand, turning into a straight, scarlet spear. It gripped the spear of fire firmly, and its body tensed up. It raised its right arm, assuming a throwing posture. It was like the image of a god raising a spear and hunting a colossal beast in the primordial age. This image was frozen in the cave murals, becoming an inextinguishable image. It was not a move from any cultivation method, but something that surpassed all cultivation methods and techniques. In that instant, the giant god of fire that was originally just a condensation of tremendous power seemed to possess a sliver of extremely glorious and primitive divinity. Its blurry face suddenly opened its eyes and stared at Li Qingshan. It was not fire, but all of its desire to survive, gathered in this spear. Li Qingshan felt that he was a colossal beast that was about to be hunted. He instantly suppressed his turbulent sea of consciousness, and his eyes became tranquil once more. He saw the trajectory of the spear of fire, but he could not dodge it. It was as if fate had descended upon him. Fear and despair made it impossible for his sea of consciousness to maintain its calm. Was he going to die here? But so what? A smile appeared on Li Qingshan's face. Matters of life and death were nothing out of the ordinary. He did not want to die with such a ridiculous expression on his face. Since I can't avoid it, then come. The giant god of fire threw with all its might. The spear was like a shooting star that shot through the sky, piercing through Li Qingshan in an instant. The exploding sparks practically dyed the entire sky of the Azura field. No one could survive an attack like this, not even Gong Yuan or Ji Changfeng. This was an attack that could kill an ordinary demon king. The giant god of fire lowered its hand, and the flames on its body dimmed significantly. Judging by its combat instincts, Li Qingshan was dead for sure, but because of the strangeness just now, he still stood there without moving. He watched as the flames in the sky dissipated, and the flames on his body suddenly surged. This was because Li Qingshan, who had clearly been blasted to smithereens, actually appeared in front of the giant god of fire once more. His body was covered in visible burns, but they were not fatal. He said, "The second round is over. Now it's the last round." Inside his body, the divine talisman of great creation flowed with multicolored light. Almost all of its light had faded, and it had used all of its power to condense a fake body to take the blow of the spear in his place. At first, he did not have much hope, because the giant god of fire's consciousness had locked onto him firmly. Perhaps because it had been contaminated by the clam king of Mirage Sea's blood, the existence it had created was as real as a dream, surpassing the normal power of the divine talisman of great creation. That was why it could fool the giant god of fire's consciousness. The giant god of fire stood still, and its body rapidly shrank. In the blink of an eye, it was less than 600 meters tall, and even the two fire dragons had merged into its body. Meanwhile, the flames on its body burned fiercely once more. It raised its right arm high into the air again, and it made a throwing gesture. The flames gathered into a spear that was pointed diagonally at Li Qing. Li Qingshan ran madly towards the giant god of fire. If he waited for this spear to be thrown, he would die. The wind howled past his ears, and his heart beat so hard that it felt like it was about to shatter. The distance that should have been covered in an instant seemed so far now. He watched helplessly as the giant god of fire raised its arm to its limit and suddenly swung it forward, the tip of the spear pointing straight at his forehead. There was no fear, no hesitation. This was the fight of a cornered beast, and there was only madness. An unconscious roar came from its mouth, and it turned into a tiger's roar. Killing intent surged, and battle intent boiled. The blood-colored vortex spun endlessly, but no more Azura commanders descended. At this moment, it was as if he had become one with the Azura field, and he was communicating with the vast and mysterious Azura realm. From the depths of the vortex, a wondrous and tremendous will shot down and gathered on his body. It seemed to be filled with praise and joy. Li Qingshan's body suddenly lightened, and new power surged out of his body. His speed suddenly doubled, and he pounced forward. The giant god of fire threw with all its might, but the spear did not fly out of its hand. It was grasped tightly by a ferocious tiger claw, and it shattered into pieces. There was a loud noise, and the flames swept out for hundreds of kilometers. The flames dissipated, and the giant god of fire's body shrank by several hundred meters again. In front of it stood a ferocious skeleton that was more than 100 meters tall. Its flesh and blood had been completely devoured by the flames, but it still stood tall. It flickered with a metallic luster, and there was not a single crack on it. After countless battles and being killed by the giant god of fire twice, he finally broke through to the 5th layer of the tiger demon. His empty eye sockets stared at the giant god of fire in front of him, and there was no longer a hint of weakness. Roar! Roar! The giant god of fire and Li Qingshan let out furious roars at the same time. Flames and gales clashed intensely, and they were evenly matched. Immediately after, the two bodies that were almost as large as each other collided violently. Iron fists shook, and fiery meteors rained down on the other party's body in a frenzy. However, neither of them took a step back, and they fought attack with attack. Boom, 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 boom. It was as if thunder had exploded in the Azura field. The blood-colored vortex spun rapidly, and another Azura commander fell from the sky. He was swept into the aftermath of the battle, and his body was smashed to pieces. No one cared about it. Li Qingshan's tiger bones were scorched red, as if they were steel that had just been tempered in a furnace. Not only did they show no signs of softening, but they even became more and more solid under the tempering of the flames. However, Li Qingshan was still at a disadvantage. Even though he had broken through to the 5th layer of the tiger demon, in terms of pure strength, he was still inferior to the heavily weakened giant god of fire. But my chances of winning now are 100%. Li Qingshan said confidently. And so, the situation began to reverse. Li Qingshan's fist landed on the giant god of fire's face. Unable to withstand it, the giant god of fire took a step back. This was the first time it had retreated since the start of the battle. Then, it was the second time, the third time, Li Qingshan's iron hooves advanced, ignoring the giant god of fire's counterattack. Attack, attack, attack. The giant god of fire staggered backward, bursts of flames erupting from its body. Its originally blurry face became even more blurry, and the flames on its body weakened at a visible rate. Li Qingshan had the strength of earth and the water god seal. His strength was endless, and his demonic chi was endless. He gradually adapted to the new strength of the 5th layer of the tiger demon in battle, and the more he fought, the stronger he became. However, the giant god of fire could not be replenished at all. As the battle went on, the giant god of fire's body shrank until it was even a head shorter than Li Qingshan. As if it could also sense the impending defeat, it let out an indignant roar. However, it reversed the situation of its continuous retreat. The originally insignificant ant had already become a ferocious beast that it could not contend against. The giant bone claws grabbed the giant god of fire's neck, and the huge mouth with intersecting fangs let out a howl of wind. It was a maniacal laughter. Tiger demon steals heart. Li Qingshan's right claw stabbed deep into the giant god of fire's chest, dug out a scorching red heart, and casually tossed it into its mouth. In the angry and indignant roar, the giant god of fire collapsed and dispersed. In the blazing flames, Li Qingshan opened his arms and roared into the sky. The blood-colored vortex expanded, and as if a door had been opened, a mysterious call came from within. Chapter 888. In the sky above Giant Ship Island, a blurry figure flew around. Ji Changfeng rode on the Philian, stirring up fierce winds and swinging the flag. He constantly attacked and harassed the three fire-devouring kings with his advantage in speed. In order to summon the fire god, the three fire-devouring kings had all expended quite a lot of their strength, and they were slightly suppressed above the ocean. They also had to maintain their formation and seal off the region, so they were unable to do anything to him for the time being. All they could do was wait for the fire god to rush out and kill this annoying fly. However, no matter how they waited, the fire god never appeared. Instead, it snowed heavily. The top of mainmast mountain flickered with extremely resplendent, blue light. Gong Yuan raised the crystal scepter high into the air. The light originated from a rhombus-shaped ice crystal at the tip of the scepter. It was a colossal piece of 10,000-year-old frigid arcane, like a frigid star. The light shot into the air, turning into snowflakes. A snowflake landed in a river of magma and directly turned the boiling magma into frozen soil. Although it was melted by the flames of the earth very soon, the snowflakes constantly drifted down, gradually suppressing the fire on Giant Ship Island. It no longer burned fiercely. Not only was the flames of the earth that gushed out from the earth's crust the source of power for this formation, but it also gave the fire-devouring kings a geographical advantage. Gong Yuan could tell this. As long as she extinguished the fire devourers would not be able to last for too long. She thought to herself, Li Qingshan, oh Li Qingshan, you have to last a little longer. Why? Why hasn't the fire god appeared yet? Zhu Fen questioned Zhu Yan. His scarlet hair and beard all turned into flames, like a furious lion. I don't know. Something must have happened. Zhu Yan said frantically. This was the first time he had summoned the fire god. He could only obtain some experience from the ancient records he had left behind. He still could not use it as he wished. But now, the fire god seemed to have been angered, completely severing the fragile connection. He could not even sense the fire god's situation right now. No, we can't wait any longer. We have to steal the arcane treasure, release the fire god immediately. Zhu Zai's fiery red eyes stared at Little N on the cloud-massed mountain and cursed, damned humans. Alright, 3 flames in 1, kill. In the blink of an eye, the 3 of them abandoned Ji Changfeng and turned into 3 streaks of fiery light. Then, they combined the heaven, earth, and human flames into one, forming a huge fire in midair. Like an incomparably dazzling comet, it fell towards Little N with a long fiery tail. Wild dance of the wind god, flying sand and rolling stones, darkening heaven and earth. Ji Changfeng knew that the Dharma treasure in Little N's hands would be the key to this battle. If he let the giant god of fire come out, no one would be a match for it. At this moment, he no longer held back and attacked with his full strength. Waving the flag with all his might, an incomparably huge black tornado whizzed forward. For a moment, the world was filled with the roar of the wind, and even the sound of the raging fire was suppressed. The Fei Lian beneath his feet let out a furious roar and charged forward, arriving in the midst of the tornadoes. The black tornado twisted and surged into the Fei Lian's body, making it several times faster. Even its form changed, turning into a bird's body with a human face. It seemed to possess a sliver of divine nature. It unfurled its 300-meter-wide black wings and lunged towards the fire-devouring king. The black storm immediately swallowed the fire-devouring king. Shatter! With a furious roar, the flames erupted and pierced the Fei Lian wind god's chest. The fierce wind dispersed. The flames had weakened by quite a lot, but their presence was unstoppable, becoming more and more scorching. As the race that loved battle the most among other folk, no one dared to underestimate their battle will. Gong Yuan, stop them. Ji Changfeng no longer bothered with politeness, directly calling her by her name. There was a hint of anxiety on Gong Yuan's cold face. She swung the crystal scepter, and thousands of snowflakes whistled over, gathering into a misty pile of snow that blocked the path of the fire devourers. However, everyone understood that this was nowhere near enough to stop the fire devourer's sure-kill move. Get over here. Gong Yuan turned around and called out to Little An, but she discovered that the place where Little An originally stood was empty. An ethereal, indifferent voice suddenly rang out from behind. Don't be afraid. The fire god is about to lose. I'm not afraid. Gong Yuan was alarmed. She had been concentrating on dealing with the fire devourers, but she should not have failed to sense someone approaching her. If this kid carries out an assassination, he'll be terrifying. But hold on, the fire god is about to lose. Gong Yuan doubted her ears. She already found it unbelievable that Li Qingshan could keep the fire god busy. As for defeating the fire god, she personally believed that even she did not possess the strength to do so. No matter how powerful Li Qingshan was, he was just a great cultivator at most, so how could he possess such strength? She glanced at the Azura field in Little N's hand and thought, just what is hidden in there? Boom! The snowy clouds dispersed, and the flames were already right before their eyes. The wave of heat arrived first. With the divine fire tablets in hand, the combined attack of the three kings was no weaker than the flame spear the giant god of fire had hurled. It directly struck Little N. Even I'll have to use everything I've got to break free from an attack like that, so how can I spare the energy to protect others? Forget it. Gong Yuan gritted her teeth and spat out an inky blue pearl. It gave off a deep, distant, cold, and deathly presence, as if the entire abyss had condensed into the tiny pearl. It was the heart of the abyss that connected to the world of Ruin's End. All water to Ruin's End, eternal silence of the abyssal sea. Gong Yuan chanted softly, like a song. An indescribably strange power suddenly expanded with the heart of the abyss as its center. The wave of heat immediately vanished. The sounds of wind and fire vanished too. Even the hint of worry in Gong Yuan's heart immediately settled down, almost to the point of deathly stillness. Everything in the surroundings seemed to be sealed in thick, inky blue glass, frozen and motionless. Ruin's End. Here, the constantly surging, changing, and flowing waters that never had a moment of peace finally obtained eternal peace. They no longer had to surge and flow, nor did they have to turn into clouds, mist, and ice. Here, the spirit turtle no longer had to work so hard to suppress the vast ocean, nor did it have to work so hard to divine fortune. It could sleep in peace, without worrying about any disturbances. This was not a world of the dead like the Hell Realm or the Hungry Ghost Realm, but it was even more deathly silent. At the very least, there were still pots of boiling oil and the cries of ghosts in hell, while in the Hungry Ghost Realm, there were corpses and ghosts devouring and killing one another at the very least. Here, however, it was absolutely peaceful. 10,000 years felt like a single day. This was not a feeling that regular living beings could endure. Even Gong Yuan could not. With her final thought, she said to Little N, guard your mind. Don't let yourself be devoured and assimilated. I hope you're telling the truth, or we'll all die. Afterwards, her eyes lost all emotions. All she did was power the heart of the abyss coldly and mechanically, constantly drawing in the aura of Ruin's End. The flames that flew over suddenly made a detour around the cloud's sail mountain. The violent, belligerent fire-devouring kings seemed to feel fear, afraid of entering the force field created by the heart of the abyss. Chapter 889. The Fire Lord leapt and leapt about. Ruin's End, where water gathered, was extremely effective against the natural fire spirit's ability to devour fire. If the three of them worked together, they were actually completely capable of charging into the field of force created by the heart of the abyss and killing the immobilized Gong Yuan. However, once they were contaminated by the aura of Ruin's End, they would develop an extremely great inner demon, which could even dim and extinguish the flames in their hearts. As a result, even with how vicious fire devourers were, they dared not barge in forcefully. Ha 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 ha, we've already won. Zhu Fen laughed madly. Zhu Yan and Zhu Zai exchanged glances and also laughed aloud. Their strongest, Gong Yuan, was in dire straits. After losing the Philian divine beast, it was impossible for Ji Changfeng to stop the three of them together. Even without the giant god of fire's assistance, victory was already within their grasp. All that remained was to see how Gong Yuan died. Undue delay is fraught with complications. Let's kill this old bastard first. Ji Changfeng, are you prepared to die? The three fire devourers simply ignored Gong Yuan. They aimed the divine fire tablets at Ji Changfeng. If you want my life, then you'll have to exchange it with your own. Ji Changfeng stood in the air with the Philian flag in hand, panting gently. After a bitter battle, he was utterly exhausted, but the fierce winds around him became even more violent. He was fearless. The sect had been destroyed, the disciples had been slaughtered, and even he was in a situation of certain death. This was a tragic situation that was enough to drive regular people mad, yet it made him feel a strange sense of lightness. As if an invisible burden had been lifted from him, his cultivation that had remained stagnant for so long showed signs of breaking through. He was born with the Sun's spiritual constitution. From the moment he was born, he had received everyone's expectations, doted on by everyone. He climbed up to the throne of sect master step by step, becoming a great cultivator that reigned supreme over an entire region. He was highly regarded by the entire cultivation community of the South Sea. It seemed like his life had been smooth sailing, but he also had to shoulder heavy responsibilities, the expectations of his seniors and the reliance of his juniors. The survival of the entire sect was tied to him, so he was forced to maintain the balance carefully. Even the frivolity of his youth had been completely worn away. My name is Changfeng. When have I ever traveled thousands of kilometers, free and unrestrained? When the fire devourers destroyed the Cloud Sail sect that he had fought so hard for, they had also forcefully severed his ties. They used hatred to recover his fighting spirit, allowing him to see the possibility of advancing further with his cultivation. If you don't kill me today, I'll definitely extinguish the fire in the future. Then we'll fulfill your wish. Die. Zhu Fen and the other two spoke at the same time, their voices overlapping as if they were one. They raised their divine fire tablets high and were just about to attack when a calm voice came from behind them. You lost. The voice was a little muffled, as if it came from the deep sea, but it was still pleasant to listen to. Zhu Fen and the other two turned around at the same time. Little and walked out from behind Gong Yuan. Though his steps were a little clumsy, his expression was as calm as ever. You, this woman, are actually not affected by the aura of the ruins of End. But what nonsense are you talking about? Ha! Seeing that you're somewhat good-looking, hand over that magic treasure, kneel and beg for mercy. If you become our slave, we can consider sparing your life. You lost. Little and repeated calmly. There was no change in his tone at all, causing Zhu Fen and the other two to feel strangely irritated. As if there really was something important that they had missed out on, they cursed, Bitch, you're courting death. Little and slowly raised the azure field in her hand. A faint smile actually appeared on her face, captivating and alluring. You lost. Suddenly, Zhu Yan's expression changed, revealing an expression of disbelief and shock. What's going on? Zhu Fen asked with a frown. The fire god has been killed. Zhu Yan said with great difficulty. The moment the giant god of fire's heart was dug out, that intense fury and indignation had passed through the barrier of the world and entered his heart. That's impossible. Didn't you say that you couldn't sense the fire god? Don't be fooled. Zhu Fen and Zhu Zai retorted at the same time. The giant god of fire's strength was already close to the peak of this world. Though it was extremely flawed, only those legendary figures whose names shook the world could kill it. Could an expert on the level of the Banyan Tree King be hiding in that tiny magic treasure? That was impossible. There must be something strange about the arcane treasure. Zhu Yan completely ignored Zhu Fen and Zhu Zai. His eyes widened as he murmured. The thought the giant god of fire had given him before it was killed had dealt a great blow to his mind. It was basically equivalent to a backlash. This news made Gong Yuan's heart ripple slightly, but it immediately returned to stillness. The ink-blue field of force rapidly expanded. The heart of the abyss had already lost control, and the all-water to Ruin's End operated madly, assimilating with Ruin's End. Even the crystal scepter in her hand dimmed, and the indestructible profound coldness gradually melted away. The ink-blue, spherical field of force rapidly expanded, enveloping Mainmast Mountain in the blink of an eye and rapidly growing larger. Splash! The sound of tides suddenly rang out in the surroundings. The seawater that had been kept out by the divine fire tablets seemed to be drawn in by an invisible power, turning into surging waves that surged towards Giant Ship Island. Clouds gathered over from all directions, forming a thick layer of clouds in the sky. The internal and external pressure destroyed the seal of the fire-devouring king's domain. Zhu Fan suddenly threw a punch at Zhu Yan's face and bellowed, "You've just destroyed a puppet that possesses a sliver of great god Zhurong's presence. You can still summon it in the future, so stop whining like a sissy." Zhu Zai shot a glance at Zhu Fan. "What's wrong with being a sissy?" She said to Zhu Yan, "Don't listen to that little bitch's nonsense. Killing that bitch Gong Yuan is already a win, and if we kill that old bastard Ji Changfeng, it'll be a complete victory. What's there to lose? Thank you for your guidance, Second King. I've lost my composure." Zhu Yan lowered his head and accepted the guidance. Then he glanced at Mainmast Mountain and thought, no matter what, the outcome has already been decided. Little An suddenly felt like she was drowning. Although she could endure the deathly aura of Ruin's End, the power of the heart of the abyss was growing stronger and stronger, producing actual pressure. The peak of Mainmast Mountain collapsed and collapsed silently. The grass, trees, and pavilions were all reduced to nothingness. She furrowed her brows slightly, but it was not because of the pressure. She murmured, "Qing Shan." Li Qingshan stood in the surroundings, gazing at the center of the blood-red swirl. He experienced an irrepressible urge to throw himself into the Azura realm and slaughter and battle. The wings of wind unfurled in an unprecedented manner. He only needed to flap them gently, and he could fly into a brand new world. Suddenly, he thought of a face. He sucked in a deep breath and comforted the eager tiger demon. He pulled back the wings of wind and called out to the sky, "I will go, but not now, and not to take part in some endless battle of blood." After a pause, he continued, "I will defeat all the Azura and reign over the entire Azura realm. I will end this endless battle of blood." The obscure voice fell silent as well. Only a while later did it say, "Reign over the Azura realm." How anticipated. Perhaps you are the person in the prophecy. I've already waited for far too long, but there's no harm in waiting a little longer. Chapter 890. Li Qingshan extended his hand and grabbed the object, taking a look. It was a rock over 30 meters in size, enveloped in a faint, blood-red color. It was engraved with the images of hundreds and thousands of weapons, as well as many profound talismans. What's this? Surely it's not something I tossed out to smash people with, right? It looks more like an altar. Whatever, I'll ask Yin Qing when I have the time. She should recognize something from the Azura realm. Li Qingshan gazed at the sky again, feeling extremely curious. Was that voice really the consciousness of the Azura realm? Was the world of the 9 provinces conscious? However, now was not the time to consider that. Between the jagged ribs that flickered with a metallic luster, a scorching, fire-red heart radiated with thousands of resplendent rays of light. It was the heart of the giant god of fire he had swallowed. Not only did it contain pure, scorching fire spiritual qi, but it also possessed a rare hint of divine nature. Li Qingshan immediately practiced the phoenix's scripture of Nerva and began refining the heart of the fire god. Right now was the perfect time for him to break through to the 3rd layer of the phoenix. 3 balls of fire pursued a whirlwind, whistling back and forth above Giant Ship Island. The 3 fire-devouring kings wielded the divine fire tablets, surrounding and killing Ji Changfeng. Ji Changfeng was obviously not their opponent. He had tried several times to charge out of Giant Ship Island, but he had failed. With no other choice, he just charged headfirst into the inky blue sphere of the heart of the abyss. By now, the inky blue sphere had already swallowed half of Mainmast Mountain, turning into a colossal object almost 3,000 meters tall, hovering above Giant Ship Island quietly. The seawater rose higher and higher, like mountains, rushing towards giant ship island one after another. They were reduced to steam by the flames, piling up layer by layer until they reached the horizon, connecting with the low-hanging clouds. As a result, it formed a spectacular sight. The entire giant ship island was enveloped in thick clouds, dyed red by the flames. What fell from the clouds were no longer raindrops, but streams and rivers, gushing towards the heart of the abyss. They were evaporated by the flames mid-air, turning back into clouds. Just like that, the clouds constantly pressed down. The divine fire domain can't last for much longer. Zhu Yan said. Don't worry, we definitely won't be the ones to give way first. That bitch Gong Yuan will soon suffer from qi deviation and assimilate with Ruin's End. The heart of the abyss will completely lose control and shatter. Once this power erupts, they'll all die. Though, we have to prepare to leave too. Don't get sucked in. As the oldest fire-devouring king with several thousand years of life, Zhu Fen was extremely knowledgeable. With a single glance, he could tell that Gong Yuan had already reached her limits. At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out from the abyss, and echoed through the surroundings. Of flames. You dare to leave after offending me? Zhu Fen and the other two were shocked. It was only then that they realized that a figure wearing armor and a horned helmet had appeared at the center of the dark blue sphere at some point in time. His crimson eyes shot out a sharp gaze that seemed to have substance, piercing through the thick layer of dark blue. It was breathtaking. After refining the heart of the fire god and breaking through to the third layer of the phoenix, Li Qingshan immediately stepped out of the azure field. He sensed the heavy aura of Ruin's End and felt refreshed. Then he saw Little An sitting with her legs crossed with her eyes firmly shut, resisting the great pressure of Ruin's End. He pulled her into his arms in a hurry and asked gently, "Are you fine?" The pressure vanished. Little An opened her eyes and let out an enchanting smile. "I'm fine." Li Qingshan smiled. He happened to hear Zhu Fen's words, so he could not help but turn around and bellow out. "Li Qingshan." Zhu Yan said in disbelief, but he was also rather uncertain. "That's me, your grandfather." Li Qingshan said with his head held high. "There's no need to waste your breath on him. He's just someone who's about to die." Zhu Fen said in disdain. Before he had even finished speaking, the inky blue sphere suddenly stopped expanding. This was a sign of collapse. "Let's see who dies first." Li Qingshan pulled Gong Yuan into his arms, hugging her left and right. Just when Zhu Fen and the others were confused, thinking he was going to take advantage of her before he died, the inky blue sphere that was on the brink of collapse actually stabilized. A hint of vigor suddenly flashed through Gong Yuan's empty and deathly still eyes. When the heart of the abyss began to communicate with the deep and mysterious Ruin's End, she could no longer see anything. There was only endless darkness and deathly silence. It was the bottomless abyss known as Ruin's End. Her body had been forgotten somewhere. It must have been crushed a long time ago. Only her soul continued to fall into the abyss, falling into an even darker place. She could not resist at all, nor did she want to. Compared to this eternal deathly silence, what was a temporary existence? Compared to this torment day and night, death might be a form of release. Thinking that, the darkness seeped into her soul bit by bit. She sighed gloomily. "Little sister, I'm so lonely." Then, she closed her eyes and allowed the dark abyss to devour her. Suddenly, a warm current flowed over and quietly surrounded her. It gave off a tranquil and intimate aura. "Little sister, is that you? Have you come to pick me up? I miss you so much." Her heart shivered and she searched through the darkness. In that moment, she seemed to return to many years ago, when she was playing hide-and-seek with her younger sister in the coral reefs in the deep sea, but she was unable to find her no matter what. She was both angry and worried. She suddenly stopped falling. Did this Ruin's End have a bottom too? A huge spirit turtle rose up from the abyss, floating upwards with her on its back. Gradually, a sliver of light descended from above, growing brighter and brighter as if they were already approaching the surface of the ocean. Her eyes gradually turned from pitch black to a bright blue. The various scenes became clearer and clearer, and there were sounds as well. With a splash, she burst through the surface of the ocean, and various scenes entered her vision. The burning island of giant ship, the stacked clouds of fire, the violent fire devourers, her memories returned, and Gong Yuan suddenly discovered she was currently being hugged by a man. She could not help but become furious and embarrassed, struggling to break free. Her waist tightened, and a tremendous force that she could not resist was hugged even tighter instead, pressing firmly against the man's sturdy body. A commanding voice rang out by her ear, "Don't move around." Why would a mighty merfolk queen listen to someone else's orders, let alone a human? But for some strange reason, she stopped struggling, allowing Li Qingshan to hug her. What's going on here? Gong Yuan rubbed her forehead. She also found this extremely strange. After all, she was not a little woman who would become flustered from a man's hug. She sorted through her thoughts very quickly and recognized the demonic armor. "You're Li Qingshan. We'll talk later. Relax your mind and work with me. Let's kill these 3 bastards first," Li Qingshan said sternly. He had no intentions of taking advantage of her right now. Although hugging Gong Yuan felt nice, it was more important for her to calm down and control the tremendous power from Ruin's End so that he could launch a counterattack. "All right." Gong Yuan was slightly taken aback. She obviously understood the severity of the matter, and just now, when her consciousness had basically been assimilated by Ruin's End, Li Qingshan had already taken advantage of the situation. The spirit turtle that had appeared in her sea of consciousness was a manifestation of Li Qingshan's consciousness, which was why she obeyed his orders subconsciously. She understood that it was impossible for her to control this power with her own strength, so she simply let go of her mind completely and allowed Li Qingshan to do as he pleased. In that moment, their auras merged and their consciousnesses intertwined. They were extremely compatible, entering a state similar to dual cultivation. Chapter 891. Gong Yuan was in a daze. She originally thought she would experience great discomfort, but instead, she felt a sense of peace and serenity that she had never experienced before. Ruin's End no longer seemed so terrifying. Li Qingshan grinned at little Anne. He also felt carefree and relaxed, as if he had finally returned home after running around for many years. The aura of Ruin's End penetrated deeply into the demon core, allowing him to gain a deeper understanding of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. As the home of the spirit turtle, the land of eternal rest, Ruin's End was far too compatible with the spirit turtle. Gong Yuan needed Li Qingshan to help her stabilize her mind and eliminate her inner demons, but why would Li Qingshan not need Gong Yuan's power of Ruin's End? The inky blue sphere suddenly shrank, becoming only half its original size and turning pitch black. Ji Changfeng suddenly broke free, gasping for air. He was still rather shaken up. He did not want to experience the feeling of suffocation a second time either. The 3 fire-devouring kings could no longer pay any attention to Ji Changfeng. Although they were still rather confused about what had happened, the sense of danger grew heavier and heavier. They glanced at one another and made up their minds at the same time. "Retreat. Stay behind." Li Qingshan's voice rang out from the pitch-black sphere and the clouds in the surroundings. It was mighty and filled the surroundings. The burning clouds in the sky suddenly surged and churned. A colossal hand several thousand meters long condensed from clouds slammed down, like the full-powered strike of a god from beyond the heavens. It enveloped everything, blanketed everything, and suppressed everything. Blaze to the heavens. The 3 fire-devouring kings raised the divine fire tablets high into the air at the same time. With a clang, the tips of the tablets collided. Flames gathered on their bodies from the ground, rushing into the sky. Boom! The huge hand of clouds landed on an invisible barrier and shook violently. The clouds dispersed. Sure enough, it's just a facade, huh? Before Zhu Fen had even finished talking, he saw a huge hand condensed from water appear after the clouds dispersed. It was much smaller, but it was even more condensed, pressing firmly against the invisible barrier and pressing down inch by inch. A shattering sound rang out in the surroundings. Well done. That's how it is. Break their domain seal first. Li Qingshan and Gong Yuan communicated with each other faster than telepathy. Almost as soon as his thoughts moved, there was a response from the other side. This was the so-called heart-to-heart. This immense power, in essence, still belonged to Gong Yuan. It was the power that she had drawn from the ultimate using the heart of the abyss. It was just that she did not have the ability to control it, and if Li Qingshan wanted to control it, he needed her absolute cooperation. Otherwise, it would be difficult to control it as he wished. After all, this power was just too great. Li Shaoer, you don't need to tell me. I know what to do. Gong Yuan was somewhat dissatisfied. She was still not used to being ordered around like this. It's good that you know. Then, don't have so many distracting thoughts. If you still have so many defenses and dissatisfactions, just throw them away. Li Qingshan bellowed. With his current level, it was impossible for him to keep the 3 fire-devouring kings here. Defeating and killing them were on 2 completely different levels of difficulty. Gong Yuan's chest heaved, but the situation was beyond her control. As the merfolk queen, she had to take responsibility for the merfolk race and do her best to kill the fire-devouring kings. She gritted her teeth and gave it a try. No, I can't do it. Opening up her mind and letting Li Qingshan's consciousness delve into her sea of consciousness was already her limit. Asking her to completely lower her guard and heart-to-heart with him was not something that could be achieved with just hard work. Perhaps only her little sister could make her lower all her guard and trust her unreservedly, but that was a deep affection that had accumulated over who knew how many years since she was young. It was not something any man could compare to. Even if you can't do it, you have to do it. Don't resist. Li Qingshan sniggered. What? Ah! Gong Yuan cried out. Li Qingshan used the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression and directly suppressed her thoughts. Since they could not play together happily, then he would just suppress her with brute force. Bastard, don't you even think about it. Gong Yuan was filled with humiliation and fury. She felt like a man was about to force himself on her, yet not only was she unable to struggle or resist, but she even assumed a posture to cooperate. This was something her dignity could not allow. With a difference of major realms of cultivation, it was virtually impossible for the spirit turtle to suppress the consciousness of a merfolk queen. Gong Yuan was not just slightly stronger than the myriad poison ancestor. Her mind was as tough as ice. The 2 consciousnesses clashed with one another, greatly disrupting their compatibility. After all, they were not the real spirit turtle and Ruin's End, but 2 main bodies with a strong belief. The huge hand in the sky trembled and shattered, and the inky blue sphere twisted. Let's go. The 3 fire-devouring kings used this opportunity to rush off towards the north without the slightest hesitation. What the hell? Do you want revenge or not? Li Qingshan roared inside. No matter how great the power was, it could not pose any threat without the control of a will. It could even backfire on the wielder of the power. Revenge. Gong Yuan's heart shuddered. Suddenly, she thought of that gentle face and let out a long, gloomy sigh. Sister, I'll avenge you today. This is probably my retribution. As a result, she gave up on all resistance. Li Qingshan's will suppressed her, sweeping away all of her selfish thoughts and emotions. If 2 hearts were to be completely compatible, they would either require an extremely deep foundation of affection, or one of them would abandon everything to follow her. Li Qingshan used the latter, forceful method to achieve a perfect compatibility. Gong Yuan let out a gentle moan and leaned against Li Qingshan's chest gently. She no longer possessed the iciness and arrogance of a queen. Instead, she possessed a rare sense of softness, which made her seem lovable. However, Li Qingshan could not be bothered to show any tenderness towards the fairer sex. Their telepathic conversation was as fast as lightning. The three fire devourers had only just arrived on the northern coast of Giant Ship Island. Li Qingshan waved his hand, and another huge hand of cloud chi appeared in the thick clouds. It was twice as large as before, almost as tall as Mainmast Mountain. It descended from above, basically like a mountain crushing down. Boom! The world shook, and the ocean surged. Spurt! The three fire devourers coughed up a mouthful of blood at the same time. The flames on them withered slightly. The divine fire domain was different from the giant god of fire. The giant god of fire was only a colossal puppet. It was extremely powerful, but its connection with them was very weak. Even if they killed it, there would not be any backlash. However, the divine fire domain was different. Its connection with them was extremely close. Never did they think that when they wanted to use the divine fire domain to trap Giant Ship Island, the cloud chi that had accumulated outside the island would instead become their cage. Again. Li Qingshan riled up. With a wave of his left hand, another huge hand of cloud chi slammed down. It became even more agile and swift, as if it was his own arm. Boom! 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 The two huge hands of cloud chi slammed down one after another, and a laughing face vaguely appeared in the thick clouds. It happened to be Li Qingshan's face. Ji Changfeng was also dumbfounded by this sight. How can it be him? It really is him. How can he be so powerful? He's far too powerful. The two huge hands of cloud chi pressed against the invisible barrier. Li Qingshan's cloud head pulled back slightly and slammed down. Chapter 892. The sea seemed to flip upside down. Giant Ship Island was immediately swallowed by the water, and even the roaring flames of the earth were extinguished. The entire island collapsed, only leaving behind a few mountains vaguely visible between the huge waves. Li Qingshan, I want you dead. Zhu Yan let out a hysterical roar. He could not understand how a perfect ambush could end up like this. Yes, all of this was because of Li Qingshan. He was the only variable. Not only did he destroy the fire god, but he even helped that bitch Gongyuan stabilize the heart of the abyss, completely ruining their plans. You want to kill me with words? Come fight me. The surging clouds condensed once again, turning into Li Qingshan. He said, King Yan, don't get caught up in the battle. There's plenty of time in the future. Once we get back, we'll destroy his savage mountain first. Zhu Fen grabbed Zhu Yan's shoulder and also ground his teeth in hatred towards Li Qingshan. Zhu Zai also said, that's right. If we keep fighting, it'll be detrimental to us. Let's return to Fire Melt Mountain first and come up with a proper plan. You're dreaming if you want to keep us here. Heavenly fire. Earthly fire. Human fire. The three of them raised the divine fire tablets and swung them through the air at the same time, leaving behind 3 trails of fire. They connected and formed a triangle. Gate of divine fire, open. The triangle of fire suddenly lit up with dazzling red light. Huarong could actually be vaguely seen inside. The divine fire tablets truly lived up to their reputation as the divine artifact of an ancient divine kingdom. They could not be compared to regular arcane treasures. They could turn into a domain of divine fire when attacking and summon the fire god. They could open a gate of divine fire when retreating and teleport thousands of kilometers away without leaving any openings. If it were not for that value, how could the arrogant fire-devouring kings lower their heads and become honored guests of the king of Southern Yu's estate? Li Qingshan frowned heavily. With this new and old grievances, once the three of them recovered their strength and attacked Savage Mountain, it would be impossible for them to stop them even with the Banyan Tree King controlling them. The threat was no less great than the Dragon King of the Sea. However, it was all too late. The gate of divine flame quickly stabilized. Zhu Yan and the other two were just about to pass through the door of divine fire when a circular blade suddenly flew out of the void and into the door of divine fire. It immediately melted and shattered, but a crack also appeared on the door of divine fire. The three of them hurriedly stopped, not daring to go forward. A crack in the void like this was extremely dangerous. Yin Qing's figure flashed out of the void. She had been hiding at the borders of the Azura field all this while, hiding in the void to observe the battle between Li Qingshan and the giant god of fire. Only when the domain of divine fire was shattered and the void was no longer sealed and disturbed did she emerge. She hid in the void and waited for an opportunity to assassinate Li Qingshan. However, the three fire-devouring kings were far too powerful, and their auras were linked like they were one. If she took the risk and attempted an assassination, not only would it be ineffective, but she would most likely be killed instead. He had patiently waited for this moment, finally waiting for this opportunity to destroy the gate of divine flame. Well done. Li Qingshan praised. Yin Qing smiled sweetly, yet she couldn't help but ponder in her heart, is he really a legendary person? She purposefully flew near the gate of divine fire in a provocative manner to attract the attention of the fire-devouring kings. The three fire-devouring kings were furious, but they held themselves back. They said, "Don't worry about her. The gate of divine fire will repair itself. I'd like to see whether she's bold enough to come over or not." The three of them wielded the divine fire tablets and stood in front of the gate, ready for battle. Whether it was Ji Changfeng's fierce winds or Li Qingshan's huge hand of cloud, they blocked both of them regardless of the price. Sure enough, the gate of divine fire recovered rapidly, and it was unaffected by the shockwaves of the battle. Only Yin Qing's attacks and Li Qingshan's power of tremors could destroy it, but none of them were able to approach it. Li Qingshan said to Gong Yuan, "Don't just stand there. They're running away. Hurry up and use whatever you've got." Gong Yuan had been charging up since the moment the three fire-devouring kings drew out the gate of divine fire. She raised the crystal scepter high into the air right now. Without the seal of the divine fire domain, the vast South Sea had become her home field once again, and she no longer had to worry about losing control. She could unleash the all-water to ruins end fearlessly. The 10,000-year-old frigid profound condensed once more, becoming even more resplendent. Her earrings, necklaces, bracelets, and other crystal accessories all shone with dazzling, cold light. She seemed like a goddess of ice as she chanted loudly. Icebound domain. 12 pillars of ice rushed out of the surface of the ocean and reached into the clouds, spreading out like 12 branches of the earth and freezing the region within several dozen kilometers. The gate of divine fire immediately became dyed with a layer of icy blue. The faces of the three fire-devouring kings changed. They never thought she could unleash this move alone. In the icebound domain, the surging ocean immediately froze, and the pouring rain turned into hail and snow. Not only did it freeze the gate of divine fire, but it also suppressed the fire devourers tremendously, making their already terrible state even worse. Actually, even Gong Yuan herself was extremely surprised. She glanced at Li Qingshan and thought, "I didn't think we could unleash such power when we worked together. Little Li II, I'm going to focus on maintaining the icebound domain. The rest will be up to you. Leave it to me." Li Qingshan laughed aloud. He raised his hands and pushed them down slowly. The thick, dark clouds flooded down. After breaking through to the 5th layer of the tiger demon and the 3rd layer of the phoenix, he was already confident about clashing with the three fire-devouring kings. However, while the three fire-devouring kings had expended a great deal of their strength and suffered a backlash, they still possessed the divine fire tablets after all, so they definitely could not be underestimated. And, he still had to help Gong Yuan suppress her mind. Surely he could not carry her into battle. Fortunately, the power from the heart of the abyss was extremely great, even greater than his own strength. He could use this overwhelming power to crush the 3 fire-devouring kings. Fellow Li, let me lend you a hand. Ji Changfeng originally thought he was already in dire straits, but the sudden reversal of the situation made his face glow. Mustering his remaining strength, he leapt to his feet and swung the Philian flag again. The snow and hail immediately turned into a blizzard, whistling towards the 3 fire-devouring kings with the delight of revenge. Fellow Ji sure is hale and hearty with age. Li Qingshan said. Fellow Li is the real hero. I admire you. I will never forget your kindness in saving my life. Ji Changfeng waved the flag loudly. As he watched the fire-devouring kings roar out furiously under his attacks, but there was nothing they could do, he laughed aloud until tears ran down his face. It was as if an invisible shackle had shattered loudly. He had broken through and reached the mid-third heavenly tribulation. The whistling wind immediately became a little swifter and sharper. Stash this fire tablet of earth away. I'll go open up a path. Don't forget about this. Zhu Zai said resolutely. I still don't need a woman to save my life. Move aside. This fire tablet of heaven must be passed down. Zhu Fen said. Li Qingshan smiled viciously. Did they really think they could escape like this? Basically, the tiger demon transformation and the phoenix transformation determined his speed. Now that they had both increased by a realm of cultivation, he still had to try to find out just how effective they were. We can't, 2 kings. Only when the 3 of us work together can we unleash the power of the divine fire tablet. In our current state, even if we escape, we probably can't escape from the South Sea. Zhu Yan immediately rejected the idea. Then what do you think we should do? Are we supposed to just wait here for death? Chapter 893. What are you talking about? Zhu Fen and Zhu Zai exchanged glances. They had never taken the identity of honored guest of the king's estate seriously. They would not risk their lives for the king of Southern Yu, nor did they count on him to save their lives. Don't tell me you really think the king of Southern Yu returned to the king of Southern Yu's estate after handing the divine fire tablets to us. Doesn't he want to see the outcome of a battle that will affect the overall situation of the South Sea? Doesn't he want to test our true strength? Perhaps he's watching us from somewhere right now. As Zhu Yan said that, Zhu Fen and Zhu Zai also looked around subconsciously, but apart from the dark clouds and water, they saw nothing. Whether it was the divine fire domain or the current icebound domain, they both had the effect of isolating the outside from the outside. Zhu Fen said, let's hope you're telling the truth. Let's give it a try. At the juncture of life and death, they could no longer care about their pride. Since they had already accepted their identities as subjects, taking it a step further was not embarrassing. The 3 of them bowed towards the north from afar and called out, Your Majesty, please save us. Li Qingshan's heart sank. Sure enough, not only had they snuck over through the Silver Dragon King, but they had even become honored guests of the king's estate. Nothing would happen to Ruexian, right? Above the frozen sea, the clouds continued to press down. The wind and snow continued to whistle, but nothing happened. Zhu Yan frowned. Could it be that my conjecture was wrong? Li Qingshan's eyes narrowed. Where the sea and sky connected to the north, a bright, silver star suddenly lit up. The Silver Dragon King had returned. The 3 of them were overjoyed. Sure enough, the identity of honored guest was useful. Zhu Yan secretly let out a sigh of relief. Even the king of Southern Yu could not underestimate their combined strength. Even if he did not help them destroy the merfolk of the South Sea, he would never just watch them die. I never thought you mighty kings of godhood would actually serve as the lackeys of humans. You've really embarrassed your ancestors. Gong Yuan sneered. Other folk did not forget their ancient glory. They all considered themselves as godfolk and looked down on other races. Becoming subjects of humans really was nothing to be proud of, not to mention the fact that during the ancient war, the violent and warlike fire devourers fought the humans and demons the most horrifying battles. Zhu Fan angrily snorted twice. Zhu Zai then cursed, "Bitch." They were both a bit speechless. Zhu Yan said, "Gong Yuan, if this human hadn't interfered today, do you think you would still be alive? Before mocking us, why don't you look in the mirror and see what you look like? Becoming a subject of the king of Southern Yu is still better than becoming a monk's woman. Who are you calling a monk?" Li Qingshan was taken aback before realizing the monk was referring to him. He could not help but fly into a rage. At the same time, he thought inside, "Don't fall for their scheme to drive a wedge between us. Let's see what the king of Southern Yu is trying to do." Gong Yuan let out a soft "N" and didn't say anything else. The Silver Dragon King quickly approached. When it was still 1,000 kilometers away, the dragon head at the bow suddenly lit up. An incomparably huge beam of dazzling white light flew over 1,000 miles in the blink of an eye, piercing through the extreme ice domain and tearing apart the thick clouds. As if she had been struck by lightning, Gong Yuan shuddered all over, and the blood drained from her lips. Whether it was the fire-devouring kings or her, neither of them could control a technique that sealed off a region as they pleased. By the time the Silver Dragon King launched an attack and wanted to withdraw it, it would already be too late. Originally, it had been rather difficult for her to maintain the extreme ice domain alone. Now that it had been directly pierced by a terrifying technique, and she could not share the burden with the three of them like the fire devourers, she suffered a severe backlash. Li Qingshan could not help but dismiss his final sliver of hope. However, what was even more significant was that the Silver Dragon King's attack had not targeted him and Gong Yuan either. Otherwise, he would have been prepared to retreat right now. The three fire-devouring kings regained their freedom. None of them were stupid, so they noticed this too. They actually understood extremely well that the king of Southern Yu did not trust them, nor did he have any intentions of helping them destroy the merfolk of the South Sea. Otherwise, the Silver Dragon King would have never left in the first place. Right now, he had no intentions of helping them kill Gong Yuan either. "Thank you for your assistance, Your Majesty, the King of Yu. We will definitely repay you in the future. Let's go." Zhu Fan clasped his hands at the Silver Dragon King in the sky and called out to Zhu Zai and Zhu Yan before glancing at Li Qingshan deeply. "Kid, I'll remember you." Afterwards, he stepped through the thawing gate of divine fire first. Zhu Zai and Zhu Yan followed close behind, expressing their gratitude and hostility towards the King of Southern Yu and Li Qingshan respectively. Making them subjects of humans and ask for help from humans was already their limit. If they begged the King of Southern Yu to take action again and use his connections against Gong Yuan, they would not be able to afford the humiliation. Most importantly, even if they did ask for help without any regard for their dignity, they would probably just be asking to be humiliated. What an unexpected outcome. This Li Qingshan always surprises me. What do you think? In the cabin of the Silver Dragon King, the King of Southern Yu crossed his arms and sat comfortably in a high-back chair. He was at ease. A series of semi-transparent images hovered before him, displaying the situation of Giant Ship Island from various angles and distances. The myriad poison ancestor and Ru Xian stood to one side, watching the up-and-down battle from beginning to end. They were both calm on the surface, but their emotions constantly changed with the situation of the battle. Even though the Silver Dragon King had flown to a distance that even a normal great cultivator wouldn't be able to detect, the detection abilities of this uncanny mechanical creation were far beyond the imagination of a normal person. Even Yin Qing's spatial concealment wouldn't be able to escape its detection. As a moving fortress of war, their first imaginary enemy was still the king's estate that occupied an entire province. They could not afford to leave behind any weaknesses that others could take advantage of. Since your majesty wants to take action, why don't you be a little more direct? Ru Xian's eyes locked onto the pitch-black sphere hovering in the air. One of them is your family, and the other is your lover. If I were a little more direct, their lives would be in danger, the king of Southern Yu said in a ruminating tone. What do cultivators need to talk about family and love? Ru Xian was indifferent. What you take them to be isn't important. What's important is what they take you to be. The king of Southern Yu smiled. Ru Xian wanted to say something, but the king of Southern Yu raised his hand. Say no more. You'll know once you try it. As for your problem, you should understand it all too well with your identity. As a chess player, the most important thing is that you can't jump onto the chessboard yourself. Once you become a chess piece, you've already lost half the battle. He used the South Sea as the chessboard, while the fire devourers and mere people were the black and white sides. The Kingdom of Southern Yu's strategy had always been to use Fire Melt Mountain to contain the South Sea, preventing the mere people from developing in peace. Otherwise, Fire Melt Mountain was not hidden in the deep sea like the Crystal Palace either. If they really made up their minds, they could just destroy it. Now that war was about to break out, the king of Southern Yu needed a stable rear even more. He did not want the other folk to take advantage of the war with the Green Province. The 3 divine fire tablets could drastically increase the intensity of the war, leading to an extremely heavy toll on the 2 other folk races. At the same time, he would gain 3 more helpers. However, he would not take part personally. If he supported the fire devourers in completely destroying the mere people of the South Sea, not only would Fire Melt Mountain become unstoppable, but the merfolk kings who had been wiped out would definitely resent the king of Southern Yu's estate and carry out brutal revenge. Once a 3rd heavenly tribulation cultivator gave up on cultivation and went all out to engage in guerrilla warfare and assassinations, they would be extremely terrifying. The fire devourers could hole up in Fire Melt Mountain, but where were they supposed to defend against the mist province that spanned 100,000 kilometers? Surely they could not all hide in the mist capital with so many descendants of guest elders. The merfolk kings only needed to attack all the small and medium-sized sects indiscriminately, and they could heavily damage the foundation of the cultivation community of the Mist Province, which was also the foundation of the King of Southern Yu's estate. At the same time, even though the Cloud Sail sect did not know what was good for them, personally destroying a large sect would serve as an even greater deterrent, and it would make cultivators fear and raise their guard. It was nowhere near as effective as destroying the entire Cloud Sail sect with a gentle nudge behind the scenes. When something happened to the chessboard and Ji Changfeng escaped, he clearly knew this was the King of Southern Yu's estate's plan, but he could only seek out the fire devourers if he wanted revenge. The chess player was high up in the air. Everyone knew he was the one manipulating the chessboard behind the scenes, creating various situations. However, the chess pieces could only fight on the chessboard. Even if they made a wrong move, the chess player would not be harmed. As a result, the King of Southern Yu could not just watch the 3 fire-devouring kings die here, but he would not directly become enemies with the merfolk either. All of the hatred did not belong to him. Ru Xian said, "It's a pity that you're still forced to personally fiddle with the chessboard in the end. After all, not all chess pieces will act according to the chess player's intentions. What do you think I should do with disobedient chess pieces like that?" Chapter 894. Giant Ship Island had basically vanished, covered in thick ice. Only the 3 icebergs of Cloud Mast Mountain remained, and the landscape of the past could still be vaguely made out. Half of Mainmast Mountain had been forcefully swallowed by the heart of the abyss. The towering mountain turned into a curved valley of ice. The surroundings were filled with icebergs that rose and fell, pointing towards the heart of the abyss in the air like thousands of eager hands. At the bottom of the valley, there was a crack, and the tough ice cracked open. A group of people emerged, still shaken. There were both cultivators and mere people. As it turned out, there was also a structure similar to Savage Mountain's Hall in the center of Mainmast Mountain. It was a dwelling that Ji Changfeng specially used for secluded cultivation. It was also known as the place with the greatest defense in the Cloud Sail sect. When the giant god of fire appeared, Ji Changfeng knew that this battle was no longer something these people could interfere with. As a result, he ordered the elders of the sect to hide here with everyone. They worked together to maintain the remaining formations of the Cloud Sail sect to fend off the effects of the shockwaves from the battle outside. There were several times when they thought they were dead for sure. Whether it was the giant god of fire smashing through Cloud Mast Mountain, the magma gushing up from below, or the inky blue force field of the heart of the abyss constantly expanding, they were all enough to claim their lives. If the fire devourers won in the end, dealing with them who had managed to escape would just be a piece of cake. In this terrifying, hopeless situation they had never been in before, they were in the same boat. Coupled with their rather good luck, they actually managed to last until the battle ended. Only then did they emerge from the dwelling. Is it over? That's fantastic. The fire devourers have been defeated. Your Majesty, are you fine? The group of people were filled with joy and sorrow from surviving a disaster. Before they could even celebrate the end of the nightmare, their various expressions stiffened. The Silver Dragon King had returned, bursting through the thick clouds and arriving above Giant Ship Island once more. He shone with cold, silver light, assuming an offensive stance. The pressure he gave off made the giant god of fire even more terrifying. They had awakened from the nightmare, and it was a new nightmare, one that was even more terrifying. The Silver Dragon King shot out a beam of light, forming a huge projection. A young man with delicate features appeared in there with a faint smile on his face. The King of Southern Yu. Ji Changfeng was shocked, and his voice contained a trace of irrepressible anger. How could he not know that there was a conspiracy from the King of Yu's estate behind all of this? Furthermore, the attack that allowed his three enemies to escape had gone from the shadows to the light, completely sowing hatred. King of Southern Yu, have you made up your mind to stand with the fire devourers and fight to the death against my race? Gong Yuan's voice was as cold as ice. Disregarding her wounds, she activated the Heart of Abyss again, and the pitch-black sphere suddenly expanded, confronting the Silver Dragon King in the sky. The King of Southern Yu said, "They're honored guests of the King of Southern Yu's estate, so I obviously can't just stand by and watch them die. However, I'm not a babysitter either. Regardless of whether they succeed or fail, they have to bear the consequences themselves. Don't you think so?" Ji Changfeng and Gong Yuan both let out a sigh of relief. The King of Southern Yu was clearly saying, "Feel free to seek revenge on Fire Melt Mountain. I won't interfere." Right now, Ji Changfeng's greatest enemy was still Fire Melt Mountain, not the King of Southern Yu's estate. He basically had no chance of succeeding in his revenge, so all he could do was direct his hatred towards the King of Southern Yu's estate and slaughter everyone related to them. However, the King of Southern Yu clearly would not be so kind as to help Fire Melt Mountain attract hatred. Gong Yuan was even more worried than Ji Changfeng that the King of Southern Yu would completely stand with Fire Melt Mountain. If that happened, the merfolk of the South Sea would definitely suffer heavy losses. Anyone could tell that this was a scheme, but it was still better than no scheme at all. At the same time, it also expressed that they were temporarily safe. However, Gong Yuan was rather perplexed. Since he had no intention of attacking, why had he come? Did the King of Southern Yu really need to be so careful just to explain a little? She asked, "If that's the case, why have you returned, King of Southern Yu? The people I'm looking for aren't you?" The King of Southern Yu shifted his gaze, passing through the pitch-black sphere and landing on Li Qingshan. "Li Qingshan, should I kill you?" It was Li Qingshan again. Everyone's gazes gathered on the pitch-black sphere. They were all surprised, but their strength was limited, so they were unable to tell what was going on inside. "You can't kill me." Li Qingshan's voice rang out from the black sphere. It was calm and filled with great confidence. A kid who had not even undergone the third heavenly tribulation was actually saying the King of Southern Yu could not kill him. Normally, everyone would definitely treat this as a great joke, but now, they had all become numb from his fearless deeds of challenging the powerful. "Really?" The King of Southern Yu raised an eyebrow slightly, perhaps in surprise or disdain. "Really?" Li Qingshan said. Although he had already lost the opportunity to undergo nirvanic rebirth, he definitely could not be killed so easily with his current speed. But now that you've said that, I want to try it even more. The king of Southern Yu was not someone who feared provocation. But before that, you should know that there's someone else beside me. According to what I know, you've already known each other for many years. You've probably come to the Mist Province partly for her sake. You want to use her to threaten me? Li Qingshan's face changed. This was what he worried about the most. And, the king of Southern Yu had guessed wrong. In the very beginning, most of the reason why he had come to the Mist Province was because of Ru Xian. Looks like it's different from what you said. He still cares about you very much. The king of Southern Yu turned around and said to Ru Xian beside him with a smile. Ru Xian said nothing. She did not say anything along the lines of, "Don't worry about me." Why would this man who loved to do whatever he wanted to do listen to her? However, she also believed that he was not the type of person who would hesitate and allow others to threaten him. Then, the king of Southern Yu turned around and asked, "What do you think? Can I use her to threaten you? Don't you find something as despicable as the mighty king of Southern Yu to do something like that?" Li Qingshan asked. The king of Southern Yu considered it. "It's all right. If I can make you work for me and turn an enemy into a friend, then that's nothing. Li Qingshan, I admire you very much. Become my honored guest. What you obtained in the Green Province, I'll give you 10 times, 100 times more in the Mist Province. Give her back to me, and we'll mind our own business. There might still be room for negotiation with other people, but between us, we're either friends or enemies. I don't want to become enemies for no reason because I'm willing for no reason, but I'm not afraid of becoming enemies either. It's not like there's anything to worry about when there's enough lice. I'll definitely get revenge." In other words, you're determined to become enemies with me? The king of Southern Yu squinted his eyes slightly. Li Qingshan's toughness had exceeded his imagination, but it was also within reason. "Whether I'm an enemy or a friend is up to you, king of Yu. However, I, Li Qingshan, will never submit to others, sell my life for others, or be threatened by others." Li Qingshan took out a handful of calculation rods, black and white, and held them horizontally in his hands. Chapter 895. Before Ru Xian boarded the soaring dragon ship with the myriad poison ancestor, in order to prevent something strange from happening, he gave the lost stalks of the king of Yu to Li Qingshan first. You actually gave him the lost stalks of the king of Yu in exchange for suppressing his inner demons. You actually gave him the lost stalks of the king of Yu in exchange for suppressing his inner demons? In the projection in the air, the king of Southern Yu was rather surprised. Then his gaze landed on Gong Yuan's face, and he understood slightly. He said he had come for Li Qingshan, but actually, his main objective was still to force Gong Yuan to hand over the lost stalks of the king of Yu in exchange for a promise that he would not support Fire Melt Mountain. He never thought there would be another change at the last moment. This Li Qingshan, that's the spoils of war of my clan. I can give it to anyone. In the past, the former king of the kingdom of Yu made a name for himself through divination, but in the end, he still lost by a single move and miscalculated, dying in the South Sea. I'd advise the king of Yu not to take unnecessary risks. If another conflict arises, it'll probably be a grievance that will last for millennia or even millennia. Although the kingdom of Yu had failed to conquer the South Sea in the past, they had dealt a heavy blow to the merfolk of the South Sea. In the end, the two sides negotiated a truce. In the future, the successive kings of Yu all wanted revenge, but none of them dared to get involved in this mess again. They only used Fire Melt Mountain to contain them. Faced with the aggressive king of Southern Yu, Gong Yuan immediately recovered her cold and proud nature as a king. However, her current posture was detrimental to her bearing as a king, so she continued to lean into Li Qingshan's arms. The king of Southern Yu never expected Gong Yuan to stand on Li Qingshan's side in such a clear-cut manner. Was it because she wanted to save Ru Xian? But according to his knowledge, Gong Yuan was not such a gentle person. However, the thoughts of women were unfathomable, so it was difficult to guess. There seem to be 2 stalks missing. The last 2 are with me. Gong Yuan immediately took out the black and white stalks of the lost stalks of the king of Yu and said coldly, "Release her, and you can obtain all of the lost stalks of the king of Yu." The king of southern Yu fell silent for a while. "Li Qingshan, if there comes a day when you become my enemy, I'd rather not have these bargaining chips." The strength that Li Qingshan had displayed was simply too terrifying. If they had no choice but to become enemies, they would have to kill him at all costs. "There is no need to swear an oath. Does King Yu think that I will submit to someone?" Li Qingshan said loudly. The king of southern Yu nodded with a smile. "He really doesn't." Suddenly, he changed the topic. "But after saying so much, you're still wearing your helmet. Isn't that too rude?" Li Qingshan shuddered inside. After breaking through to the 5th layer of the tiger demon, his strength had skyrocketed, but the spirit turtle was unable to suppress his demonic nature at all, so he was unable to recover his human appearance. That was why he had been covering himself with the horned helmet the entire time. He never thought the king of southern Yu would notice something. He ignored the king of southern Yu's threats and went as far as to fight. He had also been influenced by the tiger demon. The more powerful the enemy he faced, the more violent and bloodthirsty the tiger demon would become. After a moment of hesitation, he made up his mind. Everyone below was extremely nervous. They were afraid that they would suddenly fall out and the king of southern Yu would suddenly start a massacre. They did not even have the strength to run right now. The coldness of the frozen sea reached into the sky, and feather-sized flakes of snow drifted down. In this icy confrontation, the king of southern Yu suddenly laughed aloud. "I see. I should have thought of that a long time ago. No wonder you're not afraid of becoming enemies with me." Everyone looked at one another, all surprised and curious. They had no idea what the king of southern Yu had seen. He actually said that Li Qingshan was not afraid of becoming enemies with him. Even though they had become rather numb from the shock from Li Qingshan's various actions, they could not help but feel shocked again now. That was the king of southern Yu. Even Fire Melt Mountain could only be regarded as a small organization compared to him. Just what was this Li Qingshan capable of? North Moon. Gong Yuan raised her head and murmured softly. When the horned helmet turned into demon chi and dispersed, it revealed a handsome face that was completely different from Li Qingshan's. It had 2 horns on its head, and its scarlet hair was like fire. The 2 words, North Moon, were engraved on the horns. She was still rather confused, but the king of southern Yu remembered this name extremely clearly. Back then, the Dragon King of the Sea had pursued him all the way to the Mist Province for this demon. It was no wonder that the Banyan Tree King would favor a human so much. As it turned out, he was not a human at all, but a rare genius of the demon race. The Banyan Tree King probably played a role in him being able to escape from the Dragon King of the Sea's pursuit. Although she had no idea how he managed to fool everyone with his identity as a human, his reason for coming to the Mist Province was as clear as day. He was clearly hiding from the Dragon King of the Sea. Since he had even included one of the 10 demon kings, the Dragon King of the Sea, on his list of revenge, he obviously had no fear of offending another king of Yu. Most importantly, he was not the first demon to infiltrate the Chan monastery of Devanaga. Once his identity was exposed, not only would the Chan monastery of Devanaga no longer tolerate him, but the king of Chu would not tolerate him either. At the same time, he was a sworn enemy of the Dragon King of the Sea, which was equivalent to saying the entire Green Province, both humans and demons, were his enemies. Why would he help the Green Province fight against the Mist Province? "Your Majesty, what do you think?" Li Qingshan said. After breaking through to the 5th layer of the Tiger Demon, even if the Dragon King of the Sea came after him again, he would have the ability to protect himself. Only strength is fundamental. Very good. The projection in the air suddenly disappeared. After a while, Ru Xian flew down from the Silver Dragon King. Li Qingshan and Gong Yuan threw up the Yu King lost stalks in their hands at the same time. The Silver Dragon King shot down a silver radiance and the Yu King lost stalks flew up along with the silver radiance. The King of Southern Yu stood up. He was also slightly excited as he combined the two pieces of divination slips together. In an instant, a dragon's roar rang out, and the shadow of a dragon rose into the sky. In the beginning, it was only as thick as an arm, but in the blink of an eye, it became as large as a water tank, soaring around the Silver Dragon King like a great river. Li Qingshan raised his head and was shocked. The figure of the dragon was extremely blurry. He had seen countless forms of dragons in the past. He had once possessed a demon dragon sword that could transform into a dragon, but it was different from the demon dragon sword, different from the fire dragon of the giant god of fire, and different from the black dragon that Si Qing had transformed into. This was the aura of a true dragon. Quite a while later, the figure of the dragon gradually shrank again, returning to the Silver Dragon King. The myriad poison ancestor said, "Congratulations, Your Majesty. You've regained a great treasure of the kingdom of Yu. Your chances of victory against the kingdom of Chu have increased by a little. Even with this treasure, it can't divine everything that happens in the world. All descendants of the kingdom of Yu should heed the lesson of the previous king. From today onwards, this piece of divination will be called the Yu King Lost Stalks," said the King of Southern Yu. The Silver Dragon King split through the clouds and took off. The King of Southern Yu's voice rang out from afar, "King of Savages, if you want to drink in the future, come to the King of Yu's estate. I'll treat you to the best alcohol in the Mist Province." Since he had decided not to become enemies with him, an existence with startling strength and potential like this was extremely worth befriending. The Banyan Tree King had already expressed his desire to ascend. Perhaps he would be the next demon king of the Mist Province. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. Only when the Silver Dragon King vanished into the horizon did Li Qingshan lower his head. Gong Yuan pushed him away gently and broke free from his embrace. She stowed the heart of the abyss away slowly. Li Qingshan withdrew his consciousness too, and the feeling of compatibility was immediately severed. He was still rather reluctant to part with her, but Gong Yuan's expression was so cold that it seemed like a layer of ice had formed over her. She seemed to have turned against him mercilessly. Li Qingshan smiled and did not mind. He put on the horned helmet again and said to Ru Xian, "Are you fine?" Ru Xian smiled. "Fortunately, you're not stupid enough to be threatened." "I was so close." There was some relief in Li Qingshan's smile. Just now, he was not actually as resolute as he seemed. He was certain the King of Southern Yu would not stoop so low as to threaten him with Ru Xian's life, but if the situation really deteriorated to that extent, he would still hold himself back and compromise. He would never watch Ru Xian die in front of him for the sake of something like his pride. Ru Xian's heart softened. She wanted to mock him like usual, but she could not bring herself to say it. However, she had a belief in her heart. She would rather die than watch him lower his head to someone else for her. Then she glanced at Gong Yuan deeply and said, "Thank you." Gong Yuan sucked in a deep breath and pushed Li Qingshan away. She stowed the heart of the abyss away and recovered her cold and arrogant expression. "Don't flatter yourself. I'm only doing this for your stone heart. Don't forget about your promise. Don't listen to her nonsense. She was very concerned about you earlier. She just suffered from qi deviation from cultivation, which is why she's suppressing her normal emotions. The aura of Ruin's End really is far too extreme." Li Qingshan immediately retorted. Just now, he was connected to Gong Yuan mentally, so he could sense all of her emotions. Gong Yuan was furious. "Shut up." Ru Xian smiled. Although she still could not forgive him, she felt slightly relieved. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for me at Ionor. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 896. Fellow Gong, I'm willing to assist you in destroying the fire devourers. Ji Changfeng comforted the remaining disciples and elders of the Cloud Sail sect before riding the wind over. He was furious and sorrowful, but he was in high spirits. With the assistance of your divine wind, we can definitely take down Fire Melt Mountain and make the fire devourers pay with their blood. Gong Yuan riled up, and her eyes lit up. Her main objective this time was to rope Ji Changfeng into their group. This would be the most important part of the battle against the fire devourers, but Ji Changfeng had always been evasive. She never expected the fire devourers to help her out so much in the end. Afterwards, she told Ji Changfeng about the existence of Stoneheart. Is this true? Ji Changfeng stared at Ru Xian in disbelief. He was very curious about just what kind of appearance she wore behind the bronze mask. He thought, on one hand, she's the myriad poison ancestor's disciple in name, but on the other hand, she's used by the king of Southern Yu to threaten Li Qingshan. She's even connected to Gong Yuan in countless ways. Just who is she? As real as I can be. Ru Xian bowed slightly. If you can really accomplish this, then you'll be the benefactor of my Cloud Sail sect. Please accept a bow from me. For the sake of revenge, Ji Changfeng was already willing to pay any price, but he was not particularly confident in taking down Fire Melt Mountain. Ru Xian's extremely vicious plan of wiping out the clan was just too much to his liking. He was basically like a person about to die of thirst seeing a pool of clear water. Overwhelmed by his emotions, he bowed towards Ru Xian without any regard for his status. It was obvious that if the Cloud Sail sect survived this disaster, the future generations of descendants would all be taught to wipe out Fire Melt Mountain. This hatred would be passed down, constantly being filled with new flesh and blood, growing deeper and deeper until one side was destroyed. Ru Xian returned the bow in a hurry. You flatter me. Then Ji Changfeng said to Li Qingshan, Fellow Li, I can't thank you enough. I'm truly unable to return the favor. If you need me in the future, please feel free to ask. Well said. However, you've ruined the Fire Devourers' plans this time. The Fire Devourers will never spare Savage Mountain. The South cannot be compared to the South Sea. Ji Changfeng analyzed the situation for Li Qingshan. In short, Savage Mountain was very dangerous, and so was Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan listened with a heavy expression, but he understood in his heart that Ji Changfeng wanted to pull him on board so that he could have more power for his revenge. Gong Yuan also said, You've witnessed the power of the fire devourers. The divine fire tablets are the divine artifacts of the ancient divine kingdom. They've probably only obtained them recently, so they still haven't unleashed their full power. Once they recover their strength, not only will Savage Mountain be destroyed, but even your life will be in danger. However, for the sake of how you've saved me today, I'll provide you with protection. The two of them echoed each other, which made Li Qingshan secretly sneer. He obviously wanted to take down Fire Melt Mountain very much and obtain the legendary divine Wudong tree, but he would not go so far as to be fooled into fighting to the death with the fire devourers just because of a few empty words. The most important thing to understand was that Gong Yuan and Ji Changfeng needed Li Qingshan's help, not the other way around. As a result, he interrupted them. I'm very glad that the two of you know how to repay a debt of gratitude, but I've already said it in the Hylian Hall back then. I don't like these flowery words. First of all, the South is indeed different from the South Sea. The fire devourers can indeed destroy my Savage Mountain, but they have to consider the consequences of other folk slaughtering cultivators, not to mention that I'm a White Hawk commander of the Imperial Court. That's one of the reasons. Do you think the fire devourers have so many misgivings? The world is about to fall into chaos right now, and the Imperial Court is weak. Why would they still care about the South? They've already become honored guests of the king's estate, so there's even less reason for them to fear some White Hawk commander. Gong Yuan retorted coldly. She needed Li Qingshan's power very much to subdue her inner demons and increase her cultivation. And, only when the two of them worked together could they push the heart of the abyss to the limit and fend off the fire devourer's divine fire tablets. Otherwise, the battle this time would be extremely horrific. That's why there's still the second reason. If it really doesn't work out, I'll just return to the Green Province. Li Qingshan laid out his hands. Gong Yuan and Ji Changfeng immediately fell silent. Li Qingshan had no grievances with the fire devourers, so there was absolutely no need for him to throw his life at them. Savage Mountain was not the Crystal Palace either. It was just a cultivation dwelling that he had stolen in the first place, so giving it up was no big deal. Gong Yuan said, "Just a few threats from the fire devourers are enough to scare the mighty king of savages into running back to the Green Province. It's not like I've lost anything anyway. I've just been cursed a little. Once I undergo the third heavenly tribulation, I'll come back for revenge. Isn't that much simpler?" Li Qingshan said like it was obvious. Your Majesty, I don't owe you anything. Instead, you still owe me 5 years to use the heart of the abyss. Li Qingshan reminded. I only hugged you. It's not like I've slept with you. Don't you think you can coax me onto the ship with just a few words? Ji Changfeng let out a long sigh. Fellow, are you really just going to leave like this? No, I'll stay behind and assist you in taking down Fire Melt Mountain. Li Qingshan said, but I'm not your savior. I don't need your gratitude or protection. Instead, I need actual benefits. Since it's an alliance, then there should be sincerity. We need to figure out what each party should receive and what they should pay. The planning before the battle and the distribution after the battle are both indispensable. We can't just stick it all together like this. What do you think? You're still the one who's thought it through. That's exactly how it should be. Ji Changfeng immediately agreed. He had already begun planning what Li Qingshan had mentioned a long time ago. It was very easy for the weak to be coerced and sacrificed if they worked together with the strong. There had to be a set of rules. As a result, he said he was willing to lend Gong Yuan a hand, not asking Gong Yuan to avenge him. However, he could not bring himself to do it, so he could not put it as bluntly as Li Qingshan. Most importantly, he did indeed have an irreconcilable grievance with Fire Melt Mountain. Now that Li Qingshan was interested in a formal alliance, he obviously welcomed it with open arms. The main reason why the Cloud Sail sect had faced such a disaster this time was still because of the merfolk of the South Sea. They needed to receive the corresponding compensation, find a suitable island, and rebuild the Cloud Sail sect. How do you want to form an alliance? Gong Yuan sank into thought. First of all, your attitude. What I need is respect, not exploitation. Don't use your grand, high-end schemes of kingship on me. When he reached there, Li Qingshan communicated, if you were as obedient as just now in my arms, our partnership would be much more pleasant. Sure. Gong Yuan squeezed out 2 words from between her teeth. As for the rest, this isn't the place to talk. We both need time to consolidate our cultivation, so why don't we all go back and recuperate first? We can gather in the Crystal Palace on the next night of the full moon and discuss how we're going to take down Fire Melt Mountain. Gong Yuan and Ji Changfeng both expressed their agreement, so Li Qingshan bid farewell and left, returning to Savage Mountain with Ru Xian and Little An. They flew 500 kilometers away, leaving Giant Ship Island far behind. A cool breeze blew, and the moon shone brightly. The ocean was boundless, and the sound of the waves continued. It was peaceful. The great battle seemed like a dream, but the increase in strength was real. Li Qingshan was in an extremely good mood. The 5th layer of the Tiger Demon had multiplied his strength. The 3rd layer of the Phoenix required him to balance fire and water again to obtain the 3rd innate ability of the Phoenix. If it was still the Phoenix's Nerva, that meant he would have 2 chances at rebirth. If he included the time when he turned into an egg, that would be 3 times. Just who could kill him? The ink sea was already close. Chapter 897. The east glowed, and the sky brightened. White seagulls flew past in groups on the gradually fading sea. 2 rays of light streaked across the sky and landed on a small island on the horizon. This was the most common isolated island in the South Sea. The only special thing was that there was a volcano on the island. The volcano was not big, or rather, very small, only 200 or 300 meters tall. A black pillar of smoke rose from it, and it would erupt from time to time, causing the entire island to tremble. Ru Xian stood on the white beach and looked up at the small volcano. She slowly took off her mask, and her expression was somewhat complicated, as if she had sunk into a distant memory. There was indescribable pain and happiness. Li Qingshan looked at her quietly. He had little and returned to Savage Mountain first, and he accompanied Ru Xian to the east, all the way here. Along the way, she did not say a word, and he stayed silent as well. Ru Xian took a deep breath, and her smile was somewhat forced. Come with me to take a look. Although there's nothing to see. Li Qingshan said, lead the way. Ru Xian walked into the depths of the dense forest, and Li Qingshan followed closely behind. He watched as she stretched out her arms like a child, her fingertips sliding across the trees beside her. Every ordinary branch and leaf seemed to record a distant memory. Their field of vision suddenly widened, and an empty space suddenly appeared in the dense forest. Although it was called an empty space, it was only because there were no trees. In the waist-high weeds, under the slanting sunlight, sat a small wooden house. It was covered in moss and entangled with vines. It had long been dilapidated, but one could still feel a sense of delicacy. Its original owner must have put a lot of effort into it. Ru Xian looked back, as if to confirm that Li Qingshan was still behind her. Her expression was like that of a lost child, with an indescribable weakness and confusion. Li Qingshan's heart tightened, and he went forward to hold her hand tightly. It was cold to the bone. The two of them walked along the cobblestone path that was submerged in weeds and came to the door of the hut. The door was tightly locked and rusted, but there were still remnants of the spiritual aura of a spell protecting the hut from the invasion of wild beasts. Ru Xian stretched out her hand and touched it gently. With a crash, the lock of the door broke into pieces. The spiritual aura dispersed and the door was opened. The memories that had been sealed for a long time came rushing back. Ru Xian seemed to have turned into a jade beauty, standing motionlessly in front of the door. The house was not big, and everything was neatly arranged. The previous owner did not seem to have left in a hurry. It was just a long journey, and he hoped to return one day. However, the thick layer of dust silently indicated that no one had returned. Li Qingshan wanted to say something but hesitated. He didn't know what to do. He felt that it was even more troublesome than facing the giant god of fire. After a long time, Ru Xian softly said, I'm back. With teary eyes, she smiled at Li Qingshan and said, it's not as hard as I thought. Where is this place? Li Qingshan used his rough big hand to wipe her tears. Although he wanted to be gentle, the effect was not very good. Don't touch. Ru Xian pushed his hand away. The place where I was born is also my home. Do you think I like to touch? It's as hard as a rock. Your family is really poor. No wonder you had to run away from home and even seek a living in Qingzhou. Poor my ass, what do you know? Li Qingshan chuckled. As the dignified king of savages, I won't stoop to the level of a poor person. If you have anything to say, say it quickly. I'm in a hurry. I won't tell you even if you beg me. Ru Xian glared at him fiercely. Her eyes turned fiery red in an instant. Li Qingshan was slightly taken aback before coming to a slight understanding. He let out an undetectable sigh. I'm begging you, great sister Ru Xian, just tell me. Ru Xian considered it. Fine, since you're begging me like that, it's just an old story anyway. You knew a long time ago that I'm not a pure merfolk bloodline. I'm also a fire devourer, which comes from my father. Don't look at me like that. How would I know what they were doing back then? With how pure their bloodline is, it's clearly difficult for them to produce offspring with their own race. I wonder what kind of bullshit joke the heavens are playing, hee hee. In other words, you're the flower of water and fire I've been looking for. Li Qingshan came to a slight understanding. Sure enough, the medicine that could balance water and fire could only come from her. Merfolk and fire devourers were natural water and fire spirits. Being able to balance water and fire and give birth to Ru Xian was practically a miracle. Is there something wrong with your head? I told you a long time ago that the flower of water and fire doesn't exist. I'm a person, not a flower. Ru Xian roared without a care for her image, startling a flock of birds. Li Qingshan rubbed his nose. The spirit turtle suppresses the seas, I'll endure it. Only after cursing him for being an idiot did Ru Xian explain, my mother searched hundreds, if not thousands, of undersea volcanoes, but she didn't find a single one. The legend is fake. Your mother searched. Li Qingshan was mildly surprised. Do you think balancing fire and water is very simple? Ru Xian tried her best to speak as calmly and as unconcerned as she could, recounting her distant childhood, but her voice could not help but sink. A very long time ago, the child born in this tiny wooden hut was on the brink of death from the day she was born. She suffered from the torment of two different powers. The cold and fever took turns acting up, almost taking her life. Perhaps she was not the first hybrid between a fire devourer and a merfolk. In her words, she was a mongrel, but not a single one of them managed to reach adulthood and become known to the world. Fortunately, her parents were powerful enough, sparing no effort, time, energy, or even their cultivation and lifespan to balance fire and water for her. Whenever the fever flared up, she would suck on the tip of her mother's finger, feeding on her essence blood, and vice versa. Only then did she survive. Parental love truly is great. Li Qingshan could not help but sigh when he heard that. His heart skipped a beat. Don't tell me the spiritual medicine you refined is, you can call me mother, Ru Xian said indifferently. Fuck you. Li Qingshan suddenly scooped up Ru Xian and laughed aloud. What a treasure. If anyone dares to touch a hair on you apart from me, I'll chop off their head. Ru Xian was speechless, but she felt much more relaxed for some reason. Li Qingshan said, Come. Let's tidy up this place. We'll consummate our marriage tonight and comfort your parents' souls in heaven. Ru Xian kicked him in the stomach. Aren't you in a hurry? Comfort my ass. With a series of jokes, the sorrowful atmosphere finally lightened a little. Ru Xian stepped into the room and tidied it up. She brushed away the thick layer of dust, and the household utensils came to life once more. Li Qingshan did not help her. He crossed his arms and leaned against the door frame, sniggering. You say you don't want it, but your body's pretty obedient, huh? Before he had even finished speaking, a pot smashed over. Get out of here. Li Qingshan propped up his head with one hand and held the pot in the other, sitting on the stone steps at the entrance. He opened his mouth and blew gently, and the wild grass snapped, swept into the air by the wind. The courtyard immediately became spacious, revealing wells, streams, and countless tiny, verdant insects, spreading their wings and soaring into the air. He suddenly frowned and stood up, placing the pot beside him. He sensed a familiar aura approach. Chapter 898. The woman with the coldness of the abyss stopped at the edge of the island. After a moment of hesitation, she made her way through the jungle and arrived before Li Qingshan. She was all alone. Her magnificent, silken dress and noble crown of ice clashed with the atmosphere of the hut in the woods. When the sunlight landed on her, it seemed to become cold, losing its original warmth. Just when Li Qingshan was about to say something, Ru Xian walked out of the hut. The scorching, furious aura truly demonstrated her bloodline as a fire devourer. "What are you doing here?" "I didn't think you'd return here," Gong Yuan sighed. "What, you still want to chase me out?" Ru Xian sneered as flames burned in her eyes. Gong Yuan was speechless. After quite a while, she said softly, "Apologies, that's not the outcome I want to see. I originally thought you could leave the south, the territory of Fire Melt Mountain, and start over in a new place. The South Sea was vast, but it could not contain them. A fire devourer, a traitor, and a detestable mongrel." Her apology and explanation seemed to take Ru Xian by surprise. She was left speechless for a moment. "I can compensate you. After all, you're my..." Gong Yuan took a step forward. "Shut up." Ru Xian gradually recovered her composure. "I don't need your compensation. You can't compensate me with anything, nor do we have any relationship. I won't take revenge against the merfolk only because that's not what my mother wants to see. Go, Your Majesty. This is my home. It's not a place you should come to." "Fine then." Gong Yuan did not hope to be forgiven. Instead, it would be more accurate to say that if she was forgiven so easily, it would instead make it even more difficult for her to calm down. She recovered her cold and arrogant demeanor and said to Li Qingshan, "Don't forget about 10 days from now." "I'll just wait." Li Qingshan sat down again and fiddled with the jar with his head lowered. The jar was very delicately made. There were beautiful, colorful paintings on it, like a totem mural. It depicted 3 figures, 2 large and 1 small, holding hands as they stood. Although there was no expression on his face, he seemed very happy and serene. After Gong Yuan left, Ru Xian smiled bitterly and said, "I've really embarrassed myself today. You're not as funny as usual today. Why are you still standing there like a fool? Hurry up and tidy up the room. Women should be more diligent." Li Qingshan said without raising his head, as if he was the head of a family ordering his wife. Ru Xian was about to kick Li Qingshan, but she stopped halfway. Li Qingshan held the clay pot in front of his face and said, "Be careful, if you break it, I won't be able to compensate you." Ru Xian snatched the earthen jar and returned to the house. She spent some effort to tidy up the house. The windows were bright and the tables were clean and spotless. All the painted earthen jars of various sizes were neatly arranged. She placed her hands on her waist and examined it with satisfaction. Suddenly, a ball of flame ignited in her palm. With a light toss, it flew out and spread rapidly. The flames soon connected into a large area and devoured the place called home. Crackle, crackle, the furniture burned and the utensils broke. Her face was illuminated by the firelight. She stared at this scene in a daze, her expression constantly changing. If one looked carefully, they would see that it was only the flickering of the firelight. Her expression was still like a jade sculpture. Li Qingshan gently embraced her. She murmured, "Qingshan, as a cultivator, you can't be too emotional. They are talented and should have a very long lifespan and a very long road. Then wouldn't you be gone? I'd rather not have me. If not for me, do they regret it?" Li Qingshan interrupted. "No." Ru Xian thought for a moment. "Then it's settled. As for feelings or not, it's all nonsense. It's just that they aren't strong enough." Li Qingshan did not believe that there was any supreme truth in the world that could restrict all living beings. He did not believe that good people will be rewarded, just like he did not believe that good people will not be rewarded. Since there was no such truth, why not forget all worries, follow his own will, and stride forward? "All right, let's just say you're right. But then we can only fight in the wild," Li Qingshan said in a rather regretful manner. The corner of Ru Xian's eye twitched. She resisted the urge to curse. By now, the hut had already completely turned into a torch. The flames constantly extended towards the sky. Li Qingshan stomped down gently with his right foot, leaving behind a deep footprint. The power of tremors silently penetrated the island. With a great rumble, the volcano erupted violently like never before. Boiling lava sprayed high into the air, sprinkling across the entire island. Very soon, the entire island was set ablaze. He had already unfurled his phoenix wings, flying off with Ru Xian in his arms. Then he sighed. Now, we don't even have a place to fight in the wild. Cough, cough, maybe I'm a crude person, so I don't really understand emotions that are too delicate. Compared to remembering my deceased family, I still prefer making my enemies suffer 10 times, 100 times the pain. What do you think? That's right. Ru Xian's eyes became determined from hatred. She gazed in the direction of Fire Melt Mountain. On the main peak of Fire Melt Mountain, the 3 fire-devouring kings stood in the crater of the volcano, gulping in the flames and rapidly recovering their strength. A while later, Zhu Fan opened his eyes first and muttered, Li Qingshan, viciously. He was tempted to go to Savage Mountain right now and reduce everything to ashes. Zhu Zai advised, there's no need to panic, King Fan. Perhaps that Li Qingshan has already been killed by the king of Southern Yu. He came from the Green Province after all. I refuse to believe the king of Southern Yu will just watch as an enemy like him matures. Zhu Yan also said, our priority right now is still to deal with the merfolk of the South Sea. Originally, I thought we could kill Gong Yuan and Ji Changfeng by taking them by surprise, but I never thought we'd expose the divine fire tablets and make them cautious. Cautious. They still haven't witnessed the true power of the divine fire tablets. This time, it's because Li Qingshan pulled some sort of trick and trapped the fire god, but it's also because your control over the fire tablet of man is still lacking. The fire god only has the appearance, not the inside. He can't summon fire god Zhurong's soul sense, nor can he wield it freely and become one with it. My flames of heaven and the disaster king's flames of earth are much weaker too, or the situation would be completely different. Once we completely comprehend the 3 divine glyphs on the divine fire tablets, we won't even need to launch sneak attacks anymore. We'll directly slaughter our way into the Crystal Palace and burn those damned merfolk to ashes. Zhu Zai and Zhu Yan both expressed their agreement, devoting themselves to the comprehension of the divine fire tablets. At the same time, the fire devourers below the mountain played around in the rivers of lava as they absorbed the flames of the earth to cultivate. Fire devourers were just like their name. They did not eat anything, only eating flames. However, flames of the earth were only one of them. They could also set various items alight to taste flames with different flavors. They even had cooking methods similar to humans, setting various items alight together to create special flavors. As a result, fire devourers like to set things on fire very much. Just this aspect alone made it impossible for them to establish a close connection with the banyan tree king like the Shadow Palace. However, the flames of the earth were still the most important. They were equivalent to the staple food of humans. Chapter 899. Dazzling, bright yellow filled their vision, surging, burning, and rumbling. This was the sight of magma that would never change. Boom! Nearby, a bubble suddenly exploded. The violent force collided with the spirit turtle's profound shell and cracked. Scorching heat seeped in through the cracks, and the heavy smell of sulfur was suffocating. What was even more terrifying was the scorching fire poison, whistling past and entering through every opening. If it were not for the fact that both Li Qingshan and Ru Xian possessed innate fire bloodlines, they would have been in danger of dying from that. However, even more terrifying was the invisible underground magnetic field, which made it difficult for his innate abilities to operate normally. It took him quite a while to repair the crack on the spirit turtle's profound shell. It's too deep here. Even I can't maintain it for too long. Li Qingshan communicated with Ru Xian. Once the spirit turtle's profound shell shattered, he could still escape, but Ru Xian would definitely die. Go a little further ahead. We need to approach the center of Fire Melt Mountain. Ru Xian pointed in a direction. All right. Li Qingshan carried Ru Xian as he advanced slowly through the magma. He had to carefully avoid the unstable regions. If he accidentally caused many bubbles to explode at the same time, he would be in trouble. It's here. Ru Xian said suddenly. We're several dozen kilometers above the ground at the very least. Can your virus be effective? Li Qingshan doubted. If we go any further up, we'll approach the formations of Fire Melt Mountain. Don't worry. The myriad poison ancestor can pollute a river that stretches over 100 kilometers with a wave of his hand. This is his painstaking effort as well. Water descends, while fire rises. This is equivalent to upstream. It's perfect for poisoning. Li Qingshan had discovered a long time ago that the flames of the earth in this region were extremely unstable, rapidly surging upwards. The fire devourers must have purposefully drawn the flames up for devouring fire for cultivation, equivalent to humans digging a well to draw water. However, he was also rather curious. Is the river the same as this? Water and fire oppose each other, but there are also similarities. Brat, your comprehension is still lacking. Just watch obediently. Ru Xian said with a smile. She folded her hands together and quickly formed a hand seal. Her expression suddenly became incomparably solemn. Li Qingshan retreated slightly. Gradually, a ghostly figure appeared on her body. It was the plague ghost that she had painstakingly cultivated for many years. It was a powerful secret art of the medicine clan. It had the miraculous power to infect the enemy with a serious illness. The plague ghost was wrapped in bandages, deformed and twisted, covered in sores and pus, emitting a rotten and filthy smell. Apart from that, his body was also covered in a layer of grayish-white, giving off a deathly aura that made one's heart palpitate. He was like a patient who had been bedridden for many years and had lost all feeling of physical and mental pain. He didn't even have the desire to live. He could only wait for death numbly. The plague ghost separated itself from her and turned around to face her. In that moment, Ru Xian hesitated. She had refined the plague ghost for many years, and it was originally for revenge against the fire devourers. Now that she could finally take action, a dark, old face appeared before her. Doctors were like parents. Fu Huazi's influence on her was far greater than she had imagined him to be. The word forgive was his greatest hope for her. She sucked in a deep breath and murmured, I'm sorry, Master. I've disappointed you. I can't forgive anyone. You don't understand what your master is trying to say at all. The old man feels like you won't be able to get revenge in this lifetime, so he doesn't want you to die. If he knew the current situation, what do you think he would say? Li Qingshan said. What would he say? Spare his ancestors and forgive his seventh uncle for killing those fire devourers. Li Qingshan bellowed. My master isn't that vulgar. Ru Xian burst into laughter as if anything that conflicted her became extremely simple from his mouth. His decision of, in for a penny, in for a pound was something that she really could not learn. As a result, with a gentle push, the plague ghost flew out of the spirit turtle's profound shell and suddenly burst into flames. The flames were grayish-white like rocks, merging with the flames of the earth and rising upwards. At this moment, like the final radiance of a setting sun, she let out a scream, which was filled with bone-deep pain and despair. Ru Xian gazed at it blankly. That was the voice that had once echoed through her heart day and night. Only by constantly cleansing and suppressing it with the water of oblivion could she prevent herself from falling into madness before her revenge. Suddenly, she felt her heart empty, as if a boulder had fallen to the ground. She felt unprecedentedly light, yet there was also an indescribable emptiness. Oh no, let's go. Li Qingshan picked up Ru Xian and flapped his phoenix wings. He had only flown a short distance when an earth bubble burst loudly behind him, leading to a series of explosions. A heavy sense of danger surged through his heart. Li Qingshan constantly divined and changed the direction of his flight, dodging the attacks of the earth bubbles at the last moment every single time. The cracks on the spirit turtle's profound shell grew denser and denser. All the volcanoes in the 400 kilometers of fire melt mountain erupted together. In particular, on the main peak, flames surged into the sky, scattering down like a rain of fire. The fire devourers cheered and spread their arms, welcoming the rain of fire from above. They were in a frenzy. Even on Fire Melt Mountain, a volcanic eruption like this was not common. It was treated as a symbol of auspiciousness and celebration, as well as a great opportunity for cultivation. The deeper underground the flames were, the purer they would be. Now doesn't seem like the time to erupt. Zhu Yan said in some confusion. Do you hear something? Zhu Zai turned her head and listened carefully. She seemed to hear a scream, but it also seemed like an illusion within the rumbles of the volcanoes. The surges of the magma have always been unpredictable. Could this be an auspicious omen from the fire god? Let's not worry about that. Let's focus on cultivation and attack as soon as possible. Let's destroy Savage Mountain first. Zhu Fen said. Yes, King Fen. Zhu Yan and Zhu Zai also felt like they had been overthinking things. Were there supposed to be other enemies who would charge through the magma to attack them? That was basically suicidal, and unlike the Cloud Sail sect, the geographical advantage of Fire Melt Mountain could not be destroyed through any means. As a result, they settled down and continued cultivating. A while later, the surface of a tranquil lake surrounded by mountains 500 kilometers away suddenly began to surge. With a great boom, a scarlet figure burst out of the surface of the lake. Flames followed closely behind, rushing into the sky and only dispersing after reaching several hundred meters. The lake immediately began to boil, turning into surging white smoke. Li Qingshan landed heavily on the ground. The spirit turtle's profound shell had already shattered. He unfurled his phoenix wings, and Ru Xian's jade-black eyes were currently looking at him. Her face was brimming with an enchanting smile. Seeing how she was safe and sound, Li Qingshan let out a sigh of relief. His eyes suddenly narrowed. As it turned out, her clothes were quite the impressive arcane artifact, but they had been reduced to ashes under the scorching flames of the earth. It was all thanks to the heavenly tome of cloud furnace she practiced that she had refined her body to become as tough as jade, which was why her jade-white body had not been exposed under the impact of the flames of the earth. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. He lowered his head and kissed her faint, pink lips. All he heard was a moan, and the jade-like body in his arms softened. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.